Sorry, I'm gonna call. Guess I wasn't shown online. My bad. If if sorry, where was I? If the planning commission chooses to approve this tonight, it would have to be in a conditional upon city council approving the rezone. So this is what's being proposed on the property. There's about 70 lots here. I'll go through the breakdown of it all, but as you can see, more to the east of the development and to the north, you can see where the homes are clustered. And then as you go toward the west, there's a little over 6 acres of open space proposed to be dedicated to the city, and also preservation of as many of the outbuildings as possible to support the open space there. With the idea, and there has been there was a joint, I believe it was back in October. There was I believe the majority of you were in that meeting. There was a joint meeting with city council to discuss this item. This idea that if an open space subdivision were approved, the city could utilize that space for Morgan Farm for expanding their operations. They've expressed that they don't have enough room on the current property to house, in particular, all the horses that they would like for the 4-H kids to raise, and so it could be used for that if approved. Now at the north edge of the property. So there's about 5 acres for that. The north edge of the property, there's a stormwater basin, and then also a trail that runs along the existing canal, and they propose to pipe that. So go into more detail on these next slides, but just wanted to describe so you can see in front of you there. Again, about a little over 19 acres. And with an open space subdivision, it's regulated by how much, basically, the more open space you give, the more lots that you get for that. So, and that's all codified in the open space subdivision. So net developable land is a little under 16 acres. They're proposing 6.37 acres of open space. So that's 40% of the land of the net developable land toward open space. So with that, with an R2A subdivision, you could fit 50 homes on there, but when you add 40% to that, that allows 70. So that's what they're proposing is 70 lots. They meet the thresholds for average lot size, or they're below or I guess above that slightly, and then they're right at the minimum lot size for some of those lots of 5,000 square feet, as well as the minimum frontage of 50 feet. So, staff's finding on that is that they meet those zoning requirements. And look at sensitive areas. So other than canal on the north edge of the property and a private lateral, the entire area. So they did describe, they did provide a map of sensitive areas that is required by the code, and it's just described as pasture and farmland. Look at canals. The canal on the north edge of the property is proposed to be piped with a trail sharing that canal easement. And then on this next point on utilities and stormwater, I have you bullet points here, but I'd like to turn the time over to Tom a little bit from engineering on this. There's just to speak about it. And again, this is at a preliminary stage. There's going to be further review on this, but Tom's done a lot of review on this, and so just wanted to give it to him to speak to that.
Hey, thanks, Levi. So this is a culmination, even the preliminary plat is a culmination of several months of working with the engineers. I've met with property owners in the subdivision to the east, which would be Hideaway Estates. I haven't met with anyone in Heritage Crossing, but there are like 3 or 4 houses on the north end of there that'll have the trail coming through, but they're on the west end of the Heritage Crossing, they've experienced some flooding with some irrigation water recently. The proponent or the applicant has agreed to pipe that whole pipe, install a trail, and the city would help with that cost, obviously, because it's off-site utilities. The stormwater and the groundwater were really concerning to me, and we spent hours and hours and days working with the engineers, several iterations. The natural topography slopes to the west and it also circles around the Hideaway Estates. So what that tells me is when Hideaway Estates came in, they built up a little bit. So that just forced the water around them and it ponds directly west of Hideaway Estates. So through meetings with the property owners on Hideaway Estates and working with the applicant and the engineers, they've agreed to bring in some fill material that will address the standing water issues. And they also agreed to a regional plan to help with a regional plan that's way offside of here. It comes out from the north and west corner, installing a very large stormwater pipe that will help not only this area, but it also has potential to have future help to the subdivisions west and downstream. What this does is pipes from this area all the way down to the slough south of Maloof. The other utilities, water, sewer, they're pretty reasonable. There's plenty of capacity in that area for both of those utilities. But again, I'll just reiterate the stormwater and the groundwater and the irrigation we spent a lot of time on there. And I feel although we're threading a needle, I feel it'll work.
All right, thanks, Tom. As far as transportation goes, just go into that a little bit. The local streets that are proposed are in conformance with city's design standards, the master plan. So cross sections TS 13, and that's generally 60 feet of right of way, 29 feet of asphalt, 7 feet of park strip, and then sidewalk, 5 foot sidewalks is what you see there. So it's just a standard local street that you see on a lot of subdivisions in the city. They are proposing traffic calming at the entrance of 3200 South, which is required at all entrances of arterial roads. So they're proposing some curb cuts in there just to slow traffic as they enter and exit the property. Already mentioned the trail. This trail on the north edge of the property is in active transportation plan, which acts as the trail master plan for the city that was recently adopted. And then they've also just to note, there's a pedestrian right of way on the northwest corner that connects to that trail, and also a trail, not just right of way, but dedication there of a trail, and this will break up that longer block. There really isn't an opportunity to connect to adjacent properties because it's all built out, but there's an opportunity to connect to the trail, which would eventually connect beyond the property as well. So we want to go into open space here. So within the open space subdivision, there are specific standards for open space and whether to accept it within a subdivision. So I'll speak to that, and where they are proposing to dedicate it to the city. There's some considerations there that I'll get into. Ultimately, that's a decision of the city council of whether to accept land, but I'll present it here as well. So 6.4 acres of open space. It's about 5 acres of that's that pasture with the agricultural buildings, and then remainder with stormwater basin and trail. As I mentioned previously, that pasture is intended to be used by Morgan Farm for keeping of animals and preserving agricultural use. And just in general, and the applicant has provided justification within a preliminary maintenance plan as required by the city code, but the within the city's code, there's three open space design standards that need to be met, and staff has found that four of them have been met. So significant areas of natural landscape. They've noted they're preserving standing trees, barns, and pasture area. Agricultural land is the proposed use of land, as I've already mentioned, in agricultural use. So that one's met. Pedestrian access with the trail provided public access to the open space, and then contiguous land. So all the land is contiguous to each other. It's not fragmented. There, although it does point to also being contiguous with adjacent open space, there really is no opportunity to connect to open space. The surrounding areas, it's all built out with homes. So it's really just all the land is contiguous within there, which is another point within the code of meeting that standard. When you think of the open space itself and whether the city should acquire that open space, our parks, trails, and open space master plan, it does focus on, you know, being strategic about taking on additional open space. That's additional maintenance, and there's a lot of things to consider there. There's some guidance within, and it was in the packet, you know, kind of word for word of what's in the master plan. Just some considerations here. And again, this one is going to be city council will make the final decision on this particular item of, well, should the city take this on or not? But you can definitely make a recommendation on this. So in general, working farm is suitable use for the space and would further the mission of Morgan Farm. The preservation of open space is in line with the focus of our current general plan. The, you know, focuses on rural preservation as we develop use of the space would support the focus of that. The city should consider the broad community benefit of the proposed use. So it will be used from the standpoint of the kids in the community that need space, for example, for animals. There's a benefit of people being able to preserve that heritage, I guess, of the area. It's not the same as if it were a park space, though, you know, where it's wide open to the public necessarily, but it could be an opportunity for more openness than if it were private. Structural condition of the proposed building needs to be evaluated. There is an evaluation of structures currently under review. I know there's some details on that. I don't know, Tom, if you want to get into that or if that's still kind of pending. Yeah. Maybe we'll get into it a little later, just so we can get through and allow the public there. The area is subject to flooding. We talked about that. Although the proposed open space will likely benefit the broader community, it's only accessed through this neighborhood. And then on the open space master plan, there's a map that focuses on whether the city, there's an inclination or a disinclination for the city to acquire new open space. This area is shown as disinclination. The reason for this is because the property is in close proximity to other existing and planned parks, but it's not contiguous with them. So in general, in acquiring new open space and you know, it's focused on park space in particular, there's more of an inclination, like if there's an existing park, to build upon that park, or if it's in an area where, let's say it's a mile away from the closest park, that would also be an area to focus. Well, this area doesn't really do either of those because there is some open space nearby. Some of it's planned. For example, south on 1200 West, there's a larger planned park there. It's not in right now. And then Meadowview has a small kind of pocket park in that area. So that's why it's shown as disinclination. And also looking at the projected annual O&M costs, operation maintenance costs for the open space, about, and this is rough numbers, but about 13,000 for, maintaining the farm as well as maintaining the stormwater basin and the trail. So for this item, and again, this is kind of out of order, right? Because this is the third item you'll consider for this applicant, but the staff's recommendation is approval for this preliminary plat, adopting the following findings and conditions. So application complies with minimum standards of open space subdivision, provided that the proposed rezone is approved by the city council. Application complies with infrastructure standards of 2112, and the proposed open space is of benefit to Nibley City and is in support of the general plan. For the conditions, the property must be rezoned R2A by city council. The proposed development agreement, and that'll be the next item I talk about, includes the dedication of open space and other terms and conditions must be approved by city council. So there's several items on that development agreement that I'll get into that aren't on this list, but they're included within that agreement. So just for sake of brevity, that they're not included right here. Provide a note on the plat that property owners adjacent to 1300 South will install and maintain landscaping and clear sidewalks. Water model be run to update the water model, ensure adequate flows are maintained. Costs will be billed with development fees. The sewer model will be run to update the sewer model and ensure adequate flows. Costs will be billed with development fees. And then the indoor and outdoor water use calculations and certificate for equivalent shares, financial surety, and payment of development fees are required time of final plat. And these last two, work with the applicant on structural deficiencies of existing structures to remain as noted by structural engineer. Last one is developer must submit and receive approval for runoff management plan, reference and development agreement. So I feel like I'm talking a lot, sorry, but just want to give you that I'm on the home stretch of this presentation. And that's just getting into the development agreement. I thought for context of the development agreement, I thought it made the most sense to explain what's going in the subdivision. So the development agreement includes the following terms and conditions. It does reference open space restrictions for the open space that to be dedicated to the city. There's one exception to city code that's being recommended within this development agreement, and that is that the open space parcel dedicated will be treated as an agricultural zone rather than an R2A zone, as it relates to animal land use regulations. The reason for this is it really couldn't be used for its intended use otherwise, which is to house horses and other animals. The current animal land use code does not allow large animals in an R2A zone, regardless of the lot size. So even though it's over 6 acres, you couldn't have any large animals on the property without this exception. With this exception, there are still restrictions, but the same restrictions apply as if it were an agricultural zone. So wanted to note that exception to the ordinance, just to make this usable for its intended use. This does include dedication of the open space within the development agreement, and then the developer would need to install a 3-rail fence around the perimeter of the city dedicated space and divide the stormwater basin. And the reason for this, again, it points to the intended use of the open space. Without a fence, probably don't want to just let horses out loose, and then that cost would be borne by the city, if not, put on by the developer. Developers to dedicate required water shares and provide street trees as required by city code. And there's some with street trees, there's a few different ways they can go about it. They can put them in or they can pay the city. And so there's that option in there, and that's all spelled out in the development agreement. The developer must pipe the canal and build the trail. And then the developer has also agreed to build the trail adjacent to the property on Heritage Crossing. So when Heritage Crossing went in, they paid a fee in lieu of the trail for half of that trail, but the city hasn't built it yet. So what's being proposed is that would be built by the developer so that it would actually connect to 1200 West. But the city would need to bear the cost of that short section of the trail as well as piping that canal because it's beyond the boundaries of this subdivision. And then developer needs to provide a runoff management plan for potential runoff on the property. So staff's recommendation for this is to recommend approval of this development agreement. I want to get into more detail, Tom? Is it? Can't remember specifically. We can get that in there. Yeah, we could. Do you want to add that as condition? Sorry.
I'd recommend or something.
Yeah. So go ahead and speak to that.
So he asked if.
I mean, we have it in the preliminary plat. Sorry, we do have that in the preliminary plat as condition. He was asking about the structures. That is a recommended condition in the preliminary plat, but we could add that be incorporated into the development agreement.
So Levi mentioned that there's been a structural evaluation of the structures that are to remain. There's a large stable barn. It was built, I don't know, it looked like in the 80s, maybe late 70s. And then there's another structure built about the same time that's a lot smaller and it has some open stables connected to it. This development would sever those open stables and be able to salvage both the other buildings. But there are some structural deficiencies that were identified by the structural engineer. I only have a preliminary report. I won't have the final report with more detail for a week or two, but with regard to the development agreement, it is referenced as a condition of approval in the pre-plat, but we still need to work out details on cost estimates to upgrade these two structures to meet code so they're not going to collapse. Not that they will, they've been there for 40, 50 years, but just I think we need to make a condition to modify these conditions to include that in development agreement once we refine those numbers. Again, it'll be a week or two before we can even have an idea what those look like though. Anything else?
That's it
Okay,
for that one.
before we move into the public hearing, just some common guidelines to follow. You want to be given a 3-minute time limit per person. And you'll go and how you signed up on the sheet first. Then please come to the microphone, state your name and address. And so it'll be recorded into the minutes. So with that, we'll open the public hearing now. And we'll call Clint Jones.
It's usually.
Hello, my name is Clint Jones. I am a resident of Heritage Crossing. I live at 3152 South, 1250 West, and feel that I am directly impacted by the decision that is made here. I am firmly against the proposed rezoning. I do believe that it is contrary to the goals that Nibley City has presented as discussed, primarily being keeping Nibley a rural area. This high density housing is the opposite of rural and does not comply. This also will decrease the value of all the homes around it. So I believe that the council should either deny this claim, this rezone, or send everybody a check for the difference in the home estimate. Thank you.
Thank you. Jared Willis.
All right, so I'm Jared Willis. I live at 3111 South, 1250 West. If you pull up that picture of just kind of the whole plot zone map, I'll give you points. So I happened, I know Nibley City can't please everyone, right? It's not how it works. So I'm in the corner lot, right, then lot 7. And you can kind of see how it's like how with this new density housing, it puts clearances a lot closer, houses a lot closer. When I bought last year, the year before, built a nice house in November, I'm pretty sure I bought it from Josh here. I kind of was under the understanding that I knew that field would be developed, but I was kind of under the understanding that it would be similar Stonebridge. And it's like they say the zoning's the same, but it's not really the same. I mean, you can kind of tell by looking from an aerial view that these lots aren't the same, even if they have the same zone code on them. So, I mean, I have a lot of friends who want to move to Nibley, and the reason they want to move to Nibley is because you have big lots, you have a yard, you have a place you can raise a family, you can have a garden, you can have those things. And it's a kind of a destination place, not stepping stone. And me as like a businessman, I look at that subdivision, and that's a great idea as far as business goes. I mean, I wish I owned that land, you know, but it's like as far as wanting to bring a family here, I don't think I would want that, you know, and I'm in a little corner. House 5 feet off the fence, you know. I don't need to be happy about it, but it's kind of like, doesn't quite fit, you know. Another question now is, are those lots gonna be available for the public to purchase? Or is it gonna be a mass builder? Because it's like, if you want to bring forward housing, I work in construction, I like construction, and I know when you do construction and you do a big subdivision, a lot of the money saved by making a smaller lot usually isn't passed on to the homeowner. And usually you make it in the business, that's why you make a small lot, is it's more profitable, but it usually doesn't get passed on all that well. So that was another question, is it's like, are people gonna be able to buy it, or do they have to buy it through a builder? And then also, I was just curious about your material, because I'm gonna have 2 houses 5 feet off my fences, both sides, you know, so I'm like, am I gonna be looking at brown vinyl, you know, out my windows now, or? Yeah. And then all the water's gonna run west. Did I understand that right, Tom?
We'll answer the question at the end of the public hearing, so we'll try to answer them.
So I'm saying houses are gonna go with it. I just petition maybe we can make it just match the surrounding area a little bit closer. And I understand he's done well with creating open spaces, parks, making it really well for the family. I kind of agree with whoever evaluated the open space with Nibley, where it's like that open space doesn't really benefit many people except for 4-H kids, which is great. Most people could do 4-H also, you know, some 10, 50, 100 acres somewhere else, so for a horse, you know.
Your time is expired.
I guess.
It's a Kyle. Ott, dude, Kyle Ott. Oh, Ott, yep, okay, you can mark written notice, you're gonna submit a written notice. Oh, what? Written notice.
Oh, I thought that was how I was notified of the
Oh,
thing, and
okay,
I received it in my mail.
so that's fine. Okay, you're good, thank you.
Okay. So I'll try and stay on track here. So good evening, I'm Kyle. I live at 2984 Stonebridge Drive here in Nibley. My house and property is directly north of the proposed fields at Nibley on parcel. On the parcel, I'm gonna ask you to please deny this rezoning development agreement. This isn't just a zoning matter, it's a question of safety, neighborhood character, and respect for residents. My wife has a disability and relies on a low hand cycle. Since the city added the chicanes, the Mountable Islands, and the Jersey barriers on 1200 West, her visibility at intersections has plummeted. Consider that the Institute of Transportation Engineers states that a single-family home generates an average of 9.44 vehicle trips per day. With 70 homes, that equates to about 660 daily trips, up to 700 cars per day on that same compromised road. That's not hypothetical, that's danger. And my wife and I have looped on that bike trail on 1200, and every time she comes up in her hand cycle, she can't see a single car and they can't see her because she's down low to the ground. So that's the biggest reason I was opposed to that in the original, in other meetings that the city has had. This proposed density doesn't reflect our neighborhood. They're proposing less than 9.5 buildable acres for 70 homes, which works out over to over 7 homes per acre, or 0.1 to 0.15 acres compared to the average 0.25 to 0.3 acres lots that we currently have. So these lots are less than half the size, but the developer is calling this suburban development. That's a mismatch. The touted open space is hardly a gift. It's mostly a stormwater basin, and the walking trail exists only because the pipes, they have to pipe the canal and grant that easement of that right of way for the canal. There's no park, no shaded area, no playground, just what meets the bare minimum for approval. In September 2023, as you guys mentioned earlier, this property was rezoned from agricultural to R2A or R2 amid significant concern over the long-term impacts. Nothing in the neighborhood has changed since. The only thing that's changed is the ordinance now allows for smaller lots, and the developer is using this to back in and increase profits. We're not against growth, we're against the growth at the cost of our safety, our property values, and our neighborhood soul. This isn't smart growth. It's density on someone else's doorstep and nothing in return. Please don't let this be our legacy. Protect our families, preserve the character of Nibley, reject this proposal. No, thank you.
I have Nick DeSalvo. Did I say it right?
That's close enough.
So,
So my name's Nick DeSalvo. I live at 1386 South, 1250 West. And to be honest with you, I didn't know about this ordinance until this weekend. My neighbor sent it out, so the notifications are honestly really poor. And honestly, earlier this year, you repaved our street, and I didn't know until there was a sign blocking the road telling me I could park in my own driveway. So that needs to be corrected. Looking at this plat, and you see all the surrounding neighborhoods, this doesn't complement it at all. I mean, it's the opposite. It's literally 1/3 of the piece of property I have there at the bottom. And the other issue I have with it is, you know, as these other guys say, if you're gonna have big builders, Visionary or Jay Thomas, it's class action lawsuits out against those guys because they're poor quality workmanship that's being provided. And the issue that we're all having as residents, as citizens, is that the city isn't holding them accountable. When we built our property, we had to tear down the fence in order to build the house because electrical boxes were installed incorrect over the boundary that you guys were allowed. The builder owes us rocks, they owe us trees. There's a lot of stuff the builder and the developer never finished that the city's not holding them accountable for. So I understand that you guys have come up to an agreement with these developers. I can trust that you're gonna hold them to it. And now when we look at this lot, I mean, it's cram packed. You know, I grew from Delaware 2 years ago. If you guys ever been to the East Coast, it was a beautiful place, lots of farmland, lots of beaches. They kept selling all the farmland to build properties like this. And now people are priced out of their homes. You can't live, traffic's a nightmare. And to be honest with you, I understand you guys have those reservoirs for rainwater to collect. It's never enough. The prime example of what's going on in Texas and all these other states right now. You get big rains, which do come, it always floods. And I can tell you, I serve with fire department, Cache County Search and Rescue. You know, Nibley is very inadequate. We don't have a fire station. We rely on hiring this 10 minutes away. We don't have any service. We rely on volunteers who are kind of have their legs down from under them. And, you know, we're not supporting the neighborhood and the citizens we currently have before we're opening this up to sell to big profit and big business. So before we do this, I say you take care of the citizens that we have, ensure that we're maintaining the integrity of the neighborhood and communities we have. So I strongly oppose it. I'm sure most people here do as well.
And they're gonna have different opinions as I do and different points, but I take it into consideration.
Tony McKee and Chris McKee.
Who's both on talking or just one?
Hi, I'm Cody McKee. I actually live in the Elkhorn subdivision. And I can contest to this, we built our first home over 20 years ago, 25 years ago now. At the time, it was also a controversial development. We brought in time zoning ordinances at that particular time where anything less than a half of an acre was not permittable. And we, over time, have slowly seen that urban established community dwindle into, now we're accepting high density to the tune of existing now well over 300 homes just in a single development, where the city and all of the development that's been going on with those has not been able to keep up with the infrastructure in order to support it. Like was mentioned before, the ambulance fire is not adequate in order to be able to handle this. We're now going to crowd in single family residential homes within proximity of each other to where if one of them were to catch fire, by the time this fire department is able to respond to that fire, the existing homes next to it have higher risk and more danger than what we would have had stayed with the initial master plan, with even as it reduced down to 30-acre parcel allowances. So the more we do this, the impact that it has on us, not just in the tax effect and the property value stagnation and potential for it to actually dwindle. We also are introducing a home style that is for a stepping stone purchase. It's not like we had 50 years ago when people purchased a home with the intention of living in it for 50, 60 years or until they were gone and passed it on to their children. We're now seeing people who are using this as an investment step. They either buy it, are in it for less than 5 years, and then either turn around and rent it out or sell it off and exit the community. We have been traditionally a community where people came to, not stepping stones through. So this type of a development, although I'm for growth and I'm fine, home builder myself, I'm fine with having homes in there, but it needs to be with what the intent of the community has always been. And that is that we welcome residents and the growth for us to develop a community that doesn't just pass through. That's all I have. Thanks.
Kevin, Josh?
No, I thought I was just signing in.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to make a statement? Some people been in on this, other this.
There's two public hearings, but if I mean, they want
You
to
could
speak.
come to the mic and
Well, they're not holding the public, yeah.
Hi there, my name is Justin Anderson. I'm also a resident in one of these affected neighborhoods. I live on 3179 South, 1250 West. I'm a full-time paramedic for Salt Lake City and also a local curbing business here in Cache Valley. So me and my family chose this neighborhood. We just recently moved in January. Just got married. Was a single dad of 2 girls for the last 4 years. So married my wife, and we decided to buy the home of our dreams. And we moved into this home with the intention that there was going to be a nice open space. It was kind of like a forever home for us, not a stepping stone, right? So this land is one of the few remaining open spaces that helps preserve the peaceful, spacious feel that we have in the neighborhood. And it contributes to the rural character that makes Nibley such a special place to live. Developing it into high density housing fundamentally changed the nature of our community and not for the better. As the owner of local curving business, as I mentioned, I work closely with neighborhood nonprofit organization here in town. I personally installed curving in these subdivisions in the last few months alone. I fully understand the need for affordable housing and I support it. But I also know firsthand there's no shortage of these types of developments. It's clear that we are not lacking small lot housing opportunities. What we are lacking and what's rapidly disappearing is our open space. Beyond aesthetics, there are very real concerns. Increased density brings increased traffic and safety issues, especially in our neighborhoods that are not designed for it. Infrastructure such as roads, water systems, everything else has been mentioned. But cities like Nibley, which are still growing, have an opportunity to be intentional about development. Prioritizing thoughtful land use over quick expansion. Preserving open space can be an investment in the city's identity and desirability for decades to come. Once land like this is gone, it's gone forever. I urge the council to consider long-term community values over short-term growth. The last example I throw out there, and I know my time's probably done. I owned a property in Hyde Park. So one of our neighbors owned an acre and with some home out there. I wanted to build a second home. That was the intent before I chose to move to Nibley. And unfortunately, I couldn't because I only had 90 additional feet of frontage. And they weren't going to let me build 2 homes on an acre. Equivalent, if you were to take that same acre and a half that I had in Hyde Park and put it in Nibley, according to this plan, we could have built 17 homes. So we already have one of the lowest frontage requirements in Cache Valley at 100 feet, right? If you remember during this presentation, each of these homes are 50 feet. I mean, I think we should just take a moment to think about that. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to make a statement? Come to the mic, please, state your name and address.
My name is Daria Van live on 144 Sunset Circle, which is west. All our buildings to the west pretty much shut on PV pumps here. Now you're proposing that we have the stormwater directed all the way to the west. That is going to put me as a single parent with 3 kids and every single one of us in there in big danger. It doesn't sound like we are resolving the water problem in the Nibley community. It's sounding like we're creating more water problem for the west side of that subdivision. I'm sorry, I'm emotional because it is very stressful now what I'm seeing, what's gonna happen to my house right next to that open space area, right, of 6.41 acres. And I worry about every single one of my neighbors going up and down the west side. I propose that I'm against this subdivision, definitely. There's a lot more water on the north as well, west side. And it doesn't look like the city is preventing, we're just putting a Band-Aid on the water problem in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Yeah.
My name is Justin Neal. I live at 3170 South, 1350 West. And that long lot right there in Hideaway Estates. I'm assuming we didn't really expect Hideaway Estates to have anybody show up because there's 6 of us. I don't really get an invitation for me. So I heard about this when I got home from work today. This is the first time I saw the plan. Okay. I don't know if any of you guys were here during the flood of 2017, but we're not threading a needle. This is serious. I guarantee you those houses will be underwater at some point. Because directly across from me fills up every year, every spring. The lots that live directly across from me have to put a sub pump out in their yard to keep the water at bay every year. So you're not threading a needle. you're playing with the time bomb here. So I would say vote no on it for sure.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Please come forward.
Chris Eschmeyer, 1209 West, 2890 South. I live just a little bit north of what you can see on the map there, but not too far away. And I don't know if you can answer questions from here or not, but my question would seriously be, if you considered it, or if you lived in any of the houses that people have mentioned already, you want that there. In all reality, like I'd love to hear a response of yes or no, if that's allowed, if that's not, that's all right, but
We can try to answer it later.
I'd love to hear it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Is there anyone else? Please come to the mic.
Hello, I'm Quinn Johnson. I live on 3050 South, so 1230 West, 3050 South. The only thing I would say is, I think, we know Nibley's gonna grow, right? We chose to move here, so, I moved in a little less than a year ago, so there's no expectation that construction's not gonna happen, but I would say as the proud owner of $30,000 worth of dirt, we can say that developers aren't necessarily trustworthy to bring in the dirt to avoid flooding, right? My foundation walls are 6 feet tall because I had to bring in dirt. So I think, there's something to be said for just considering what are these impacts do, that made my house less affordable for sure. And I think if affordable housing is the goal, let's consider all of the impacts to that. Let's consider, are these lots ready for development upon completion? So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Sir, come forward, please.
Hello, my name is Tyler Hanning. I live in the Stonebridge community on 12-2 West, 2890 South. Also here to encourage you to vote no on this, as many others have said. I think that a lot of us in the neighborhood, we look at that plan like that, and it's our first thing. We certainly want the community to remain similar to what it is now. To say that this is an R2A zone that is the same as the other R2A zones is, it's a false equivalency, right? There was an amendment that made it so that the smaller lots could be built, so when the lots were built back then, there's a different definition, right? So same label, but they're not equivalent. I get worried about certain things such as, traffic, like other people have worried about how it's gonna affect our school systems. I know we already have the need for parents to go into the elementary school to help with the teachers. So certainly that would be impacted. My one question would be, there was mention of some sort of traffic safety improvement that would happen on the 3200 South. If that is anything similar to what we got in front of Stonebridge, I would say no. Thank you.
Hey. Is there anyone else? Please come forward.
My name is Brittany DeSalvo. I'm in 3186 South, 1250 West. My job at home is to appeal to everybody's emotions, so that's what I'm gonna do here, because I'm not as smart as everybody else that's often has a little construction experience. Like Nick said, we moved here about 2 years ago from Delaware, and I've already seen one state completely ruined in my 32 years of living there. By overdevelopment, and there's, like everybody's saying, there's nowhere for the water to go, everywhere floods. The houses are built by, for lack of a better word, crappy builders that don't care about what people they're building for. Not every builder is as awesome as Cody and Chris when they build. So, so I urge you to think about that. If you've never lived somewhere else, and I get that like development has to happen, like nobody moved here thinking that there would never be another house behind them, side of them. But building something like this doesn't match anything that we all thought. So if you've never lived anywhere else, never seen anywhere else ruined, I could see how you could overlook this and see that it doesn't really matter. But it doesn't, because we moved here, and a lot of people have moved here because it's a safe place for our kids. And just the beauty of the area, and it's just like doing something like this is just gonna like distance. I urge you to think about that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the hearing this time, and we'll try to go through and answer some of these questions. I lived in Nibley for close to 50 years. So I understand where a lot of you are concerned in the water, concern pots. So that farmers grow old, properties change ownership. And trying to respect that right to the property. So, just so you know.
Claire, can I speak to a few of
The question.
the questions? There was a question about what type of materials for the homes. So that is something that the city cannot regulate, design of homes. I mean, it has to meet building code, it has to be safe. But as far as what material, what colors, the state has outright said you cannot regulate single family, two family homes, the design of them. So what's gonna go there will be whatever the demand is for, whoever is building the home. There was a question about, whether this would be I think whether it would be a developer builder type project or if they'd be selling individual lots. I don't know if Josh wants to speak to that. I mean, we typically don't, for one thing, we don't regulate based on that. What I've heard is that they will be sold, but I don't know. It could be either, right? So I guess we don't know at this point in time. But the city doesn't, nor can it discriminate based upon that factor, I would say. At least in the approval of a subdivision. So I don't know, Tom, if there were any other questions. I know there were a lot of comments. I don't know if there's any questions that I feel like I could address, but
I took pretty good notes here. Jared Willis asked about the stormwater, what direction that flows. Generally, it flows to the north and the west, but it also, when Hideaway Estates was developed, they built up. So it kind of goes around there, so it comes down and around, and the exact low spot is down toward that little. Can I use your print for this here?
it's not gonna work unless I push escape.
Look at 3 lots up, right in between those 2 back-to-back lots. Right. Anyway, if you count 3 lots up from 3200 south, in between those 2 lots, that's about where the lowest point of the subdivision is.
You're talking about right here?
Nope, down, right there. That's the low point along with that northwest side. So part of this request to bring fill material in and mitigate that flooding, the applicant has agreed to do that as part of this development. There's some other comments about 12th West and 3200 South. 12th West, it's one of our arterial roads, as is 3200 South. So these are designed to accommodate the higher traffic. The 1200 West in particular was designed with a more narrow lane width to help control speeds. If you go south of 3200 South where that lane width is not controlled, we're getting speeds on average of 50 to 70 miles an hour down there. So it's been pretty effective, that design and that configuration there. See, there was the flooding again. The engineer and I have spent hours and hours of analyzation of this, and we believe that the design is going to work. There's some other comments about schools and things like that. I don't know if the commission wants to answer. Is there any other questions that were asked that you'd like me to answer?
the concern about emergency vehicles. I mean, Hiram City used to be the volunteer fire department when I was a kid, and even as an adult. Now they're actually paid full time.
So, hold on, let's, there's two paid full timers, that's what's for volunteers.
Or volunteers.
Yes.
My wife's from Hiram, and the alarm would go off in Hiram, they all run to the fire department. So they follow the fire trucks to the fire.
Yeah, so I just wanna make that clear, it's not full-time staff.
So two in each location.
There's one location, and there's two Monday through Friday.
Okay, because there's one on close to the west end.
That's cashed in. It's cashed in.
Just one question on the engineering side of this. So.
Come to the mic, so.
No.
Apologize just for taking minutes, if we can pass around.
So one of my biggest concerns with this is the impermeable surface that we're dealing with. When you guys did your assessment on this, was the housing impermeable surface taken into consideration? Because it is often overlooked. And if it has, with the drainage that is in it, is there enough of that drainage allowed for even a 50-year flood or a 100-year flood for that to be able to exit within the plan that they have presented as the developer? Because what I was hearing before is that it's still under review and has not fully been.
So we vetted out the stormwater, and it's a calculation based on, I don't know how deep you want to get into the stormwater. I have vast experience in stormwater design and design review. The way this works is you take a raw piece of land and you evaluate it in its raw condition, in historic runoff conditions. And we run the 100-year storm, about 3.02 inches. Then we remodel that with the impervious areas of roof space, driveways, patios, and you take an average, obviously, some will have more impervious area than others, but average throughout the valley is about 3,000 square feet of impervious area, roof space, driveway, etc. So you take now these two models are compared, and you take the difference and you try to mimic the historic by putting in a stormwater pond. And the stormwater pond will collect all this runoff that's excess and will control the flow outward with an orifice or another flow control device. So yes, we have done all that through these evaluations and the models.
Okay, has that been compared to what they are presenting as the developer for their drainage plan?
Yes.
Okay. Then the second question is, what is taking place with the French drain that you're creating with your sewer and water system that you're running through this? Because as of right now, we've done 2 homes in the Heritage Crossing, and both of which, as soon as we broke into the sewer system in order to tie into it, we had well over, we were running 6-inch pumps off of it and wasn't able to keep up.
So
Putting all that impermeable surface in, pushing it into a located area, and then that all has to go into the ground, and then we drain it through all of our sewer and water systems, and there's no plan for what's taking place underground like we are on above ground. So when we're talking about the existing sump pumps that are constantly running now, we're going to overwhelm those with anything that we're pushing through the ground with the water tables.
I'm not sure your question.
Has it been taken into consideration?
So I'll give you the history on me. I came here almost 3 years ago. Heritage Crossing was already approved when I got here. First thing I noticed was the groundwater, and we have plenty. I don't know, you can look at it and it starts weeping sometimes. First thing I did was with utilities, I identified this underground French drain that you're talking about, because when you build infrastructure, it's piping, and then you surround it with gravels and sands and things, and so it creates a conveyance, right? So what we did was change the standard. It was unregulated before I got here. We install clay dams every 200 feet. So it's no longer gonna be free flowing through these trenches. I also worked with the design engineer and we're gonna put I can't remember who mentioned the concern for their neighbors to the subdivision to the west. But there will be an underground French drain or an underground land drain that's installed on that west boundary. It'll take it to this pond, through the pond and convey it into the piping. So you're not, and this pond isn't designed as a retention pond, which a retention pond would hold the water and seep it into the ground. This is a detention pond, which just controls the flow outward to try to mimic that historic flow, so you're not overwhelming the receiving waters. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I'm again still concerned with where the exit for all that is.
It's up on the northwest corner. And it'll go into a piping system that's gonna go all the way to the slough that is south and kind of west of Maloof.
Is that like an existing line already?
Nope.
Or it has to be put in? Who's responsible for putting that in outside?
We're cooperating with the developer. And that's a master planned stormwater project and we have it budgeted for this year.
Thanks.
Thanks for that question.
Any other kind of questions? So that master plan stormwater drain, none of that was here when we had the floods, correct?
That's correct.
Did the plan to put that in exist prior to the flood happening, or was it kind of like a result of what happened and trying to mitigate future damages?
It predates me. I don't know the timing of when that was. That was in place when I got here. And I've been planning for that since I've got here. That was one of the big projects that Justin made me aware of. He's like, you need to be aware of this area. And so when this project came in, luckily my memory worked. I said, hey, we need to look at this master plan.
Yeah, I mean, everyone who's lived in Nibley knows we get surface flooding in that area. It's not on the FEMA maps. It's not a 100-year floodplain, anything like that. So essentially, the way I'm taking this is the engineering that you've done should mitigate and should prevent some of the damage caused from the flood a couple of years ago.
Yes, and just my experience here also, I believe that flooding predated Heritage Crossing as well.
It did.
And because of that, I believe the drainage patterns have changed. What was described to me by the Hideaway Estates residents on the west side, I talked to 3 of them. One of them's fairly new, but the other 2 had some pretty good history on it. There used to be some flooding that came through from the north side and cut across their area. After this development was put in, they didn't have that, even in that big storm, that big snow that we had a couple of years ago. They didn't have that same flow pattern through their yards. It still got wet over there, but it didn't flow through their yards like it used to before that subdivision was installed. Or constructed, sorry. Now, this is just hearsay, third party of people that live there, that have lived there for years.
So the way that the subdivisions are right now, so if I'm reading it correctly, basically, we're not getting the same surface flow as we used to have west of 12. It's not collecting into.
That was my impression from what they were telling me, yes.
Is that now going into the system? Or where is that collecting now?
I think 12th West kind of created the dam for it, lets it seep into the ground. I think the development raised the ground level in that area. It just isn't flowing freely like it used to. And then with piping the canal on the north end, that should actually help even more so. Because that canal can get, that ditch, I guess, that ditch runs east to west on the north boundary of this property. And then on the west boundary, it splits. It'll go kind of to the north and water some of those fields. That receives both runoff and they have controlled flows from the canal company that it comes from just north and on the east side of what's that open space there?
Nibley Gardens or.
I guess it'd be Nibley Gardens, that open space there. There's a diversion that they can push water north and south.
Church and
And right by the wellhead right there too. So anyway, that's just the impression I'm getting from people is they tell me, yeah, we didn't get it the last big snow year. And my impression is because of the Heritage Crossing. Now, mention was it Jared? Who just came up here? Talking about, thank you, Jared. So you said there's another kind of nuance that happened about the time they were building those. We had a water line main broken. It was broken right around 10th West, 11th West. It was the old 12th West alignment. There was an old hydrant T that came in by, I don't know if you know the Stotts, right there by the roundabout. That hydrant went to a hydrant, there was a T that went to a hydrant. They finally found, this thing finally came to the surface when we were getting complaints clear on the other side of 12th West, probably I think one lot past the Hideaway Estates project, the water was actually surfacing there from this water main break and it was just traveling through the ground, through these conveyances that are created with the infrastructure. But once that was repaired, that all dried up too. So that might have been some of the experience on the high water flows that were found when that was constructed as well. We don't know how long it was leaking, but that leak was there for at least 2 years, that where it was surfacing at that new hole.
So the way that the engineering's been done, no water should flow to the west end of this property line ball. Past the heritage farm. The open space, like if there's no water that should flow across the space, so the farm.
No, it should all be collected into the street, into the stormwater system, conveyed up through piping to that pond to the north. And the groundwater and any surface flow that's west of that roadway, that's gonna be captured with this land drain that I worked out with the design engineer.
Clarification. Come up to my page, it's real quick. I just wanna know, to get to the moving properties. There's 2 houses that border there, how do you go through that pond? To the moving properties, is it?
He's asking about, you get the drainage into the.
2 houses border into that, and you have the pond.
If you could come up to the mic, we have people online, that'd be, thank you.
I don't know, just on the pond, you say it's gonna flow into the moving property. That pond's gonna be flowing water. How do you get through there when there's 2 houses that butt up to each other there?
So there's a canal that runs through there already. It goes kind of south through the little pie-shaped properties to the west on the north end here. So that they're through, inherently, there's a prescriptive easement through there. And with that, there's also a prescriptive easement for stormwater runoff to go there. As long as you don't increase flows, you're allowed to maintain the historic flow direction. So that's how it's gonna happen. I'm also working with the property owner, trying to secure a trail easement to connect the trail on the north to keep it going along the Luke's property there.
So that canal that's piped on the last corner there on the northwest, it has access to take that pond through too, you're saying?
There's a prescriptive easement for the canal and all the receiving stormwater that canal received over the years, so that they have perpetually.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I need to leave pretty soon. Mind if I ask a few questions?
Yeah, do you want to go into item number 4?
Are we on
My
my
discussion? No. We'll do that, now you can go ahead.
To me, the traffic. Point of view, we're trying to study. That film is large.
So, and Tom, you can speak to this, they were just under that threshold, so over 20 acres. We didn't require one, for example, for Mount Vista or Nibley Farms, a very similar scale to this one as far as the number of homes. So it wasn't required for this one.
It's based on acreage.
acreage and there's other factors, maybe Tom, I don't know if you want to speak to that any, but it was.
Yeah, code governs it by acreage. And
Says-
unless there's a condition set by planning commissioner or city council otherwise.
That's by acreage, I think we need to revisit that.
Right, it's, I mean, it is 70 homes.
So this,
I-
just a quick question, this is strictly based on the size of the land and not based on how many single family homes you're building?
We'll get to that, he's.
Those are considered by staff. There is some discretion with the city engineer to ask for it if it's needed. But that's the starting point within the.
So the numbers that were expressed by the speaker there, they're accurate for an overall traffic study. But there's also other things you look at is peak hour. That peak hour is usually 0.65 trips per unit. So with that means that in that peak hour, when you're gonna have that highest congestion, you'll have about 45 vehicles running through during that peak hour. That's less than 1 a minute.
Okay. My question is, can we make this green zone contingent? The developer must build an open space subdivision. The reason why I bring that up is what happens if we vote to rezone this and it goes, says city council approves it. And we put sufficient conditions on the developer, but they didn't want to build an open space subdivision going forward. What can we do to protect this process so that if we rezone this, that it's gonna be an open space subdivision?
That is an option of the city. If you want to recommend that, you could. Conditional rezones are allowed. It seems like more often than not, the rezones that we've had are conditional. We try to be a little bit careful with too many conditions because in 20 years, tracking all that down is a little bit difficult. I don't think something like that, especially given that's what's being proposed right now, is too unreasonable. I think if you were approving it and they wanted to do something completely different, I mean, I guess you could always revert back to the old zoning, right? I mean, that's the thing. You could, and I would probably suggest to give a time frame, even if it's 5 years, that an open, otherwise it may revert back. Because the city's code's going to change. Who knows if we're even going to have the open space subdivision code in 3, 4, 5 years. And so to reference it specific in a rezone, the rezone is going to stick to the land for it could for 50 years. It could never change. But the open space subdivision changes over time. I mean, the zoning could change as well, but it is an option to answer it more briefly.
Also, given the fact that this is 4 items on the list tonight, I don't know if it's talk about the design of the being proposed. But just want to, I think we should consider, I'm sure what is going to be an HOA. Who's going to maintain, it sounds like the city's going to maintain the open space.
That's what's being proposed.
If the city decides not to take on that responsibility, how would they do that? Would they do an HOA? How would they maintain the open space, including the fence? Even if the city takes that responsibility, who maintains the fence?
Yeah, and I should mention, I would suggest, Chair, to give the developer some time to speak to anything, but that is what's being proposed, is that it's dedicated to the city at this point in time and maintained by the city. So it wouldn't necessarily require an HOA. But
Josh, would you?
Sure, is there a way maybe until there's more questions that
Okay,
instead of going back and forth?
we can do that.
Yeah, that might be a better use.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out, because sometimes we've been through meetings where we don't even give the applicant a chance and we decision, and I think it's good to give them a chance, just suggesting it.
2023 and commissioners definitely emphasize our valleys. I'm an Ash Valley native and it's not fun going down Main Street now compared to when I was a kid. And, but we all have, needs, in the real estate market, and this is going to definitely meet one of the needs, which, smaller lots are needed, more affordable lots. But we didn't just come to this trying to maximize what we were making, but rather, for the last year and a half, I've been working with neighbors and council members and listening to people and trying to come up with a solution that will maybe not make everybody happy, but certainly make the majority of people happy. So the open space, we put surveys out trying to figure out what people wanted. This is what kind of came back, that there was a need with Morgan Farms, that Morgan Farms had, was bursting in the seams and needed another location. It was diverse. Instead of just having a soccer field or a baseball field where a lot of people felt there were plenty, we went ahead and tried to keep it as ag as possible. And it seemed like a lot of the neighbors were happy about that. That's kind of when I came last time. Some of the objections were they wanted to keep it similar to how it was. And so we listened. As far as what are some of the other questions that you feel like needed addressing?
There was something on traffic going into on the 3200 south. On the version for safety to slow it down, so that's not gonna be on 3200 south, that's gonna actually.
So our code does require traffic calming at intersections on arterial roads. What they're proposing here is kind of like a bulb out chicane type of, not a chicane, but a bulb out type of flare that restricts the throat with the curb. So they're not isolated bulbs like what you see on the retrofit on the intersections north of here.
It's the same as what basically the same as what you see on Heritage Crossing there.
Yeah, and I guess one other thing that I would like to say, because I feel like it's been addressed a little bit, but this area has had a lot of flooding in the past, and I've gone and spoken with a lot of the neighbors about that. And I feel like we've been very thoughtful in our approach to addressing this area. And I feel like we're going above and beyond in a lot of the areas to try to resolve current issues that are going to, happen regardless to whether 4 homes are built in this area or it's just kept the same. I feel like we've been a good partner to Nibley.
The public meeting's closed at this moment.
There will be another public
We'll
hearing,
be,
right?
Give you a chance.
I can stay after too.
All the questions weren't answered from the original meeting. We asked who is responsible for holding the developer actually doing what you guys approved. And we asked about how people were not even notified of this meeting, or all not even be here, which seems pretty deceptive on y'all's part.
So, the city is responsible for ensuring that the development agreement is adhered to. City, I guess, in general. That would be, it usually goes on city staff, but ultimately city council, to ensure that happens. As far as notification, this this was properly notified, which is, all properties within 300 feet of this were notified as required by state code. And just in general, the city's notifications mirror what is required by state code. So all properties within 300 feet. It was posted on the public meeting notice, the Utah public meeting notice website, the city website, here at City Hall as well. And I just want to note this, that, you know, with everyone here, that you can go on the public meeting notice website and subscribe to Nibley City, and you will be notified in your inbox every time a meeting happens. I would suggest that if you are interested in being informed about what goes on in the city, that you do that. I know I do that with other cities that are nearby, so that I'm informed what's going on in Logan and Millville and other cities, you know, that may impact Nibley City. It's a pretty quick notification, and then you get that, and you know what's going on. But beyond that, you know, it's within 300 feet, which really that is what's required. Beyond that is a significant cost to the city. So unless we're directed by the city council to go beyond the minimum, that's what we do, because the cost, and that is covered by the developer, by the way, on their application. There's a public notification fee and that. So
Well. Hey,
the
we're, the public meeting is closed, we'll come give it another second. No, it's not yet, please, sir. Can you just tell me what the website is? Like, I'm not.
So it's Utah Public, if you Google it, Utah Public Notice.
Yeah.
Utah.gov/PMN, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah. I would suggest you do that, then you'll be informed about that. And yeah, someone from the city could help you if you have any trouble getting through that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the council? Either have anything? Green?
I wanted to add, if it's appropriate, just to mention something, housing cost, would that be appropriate? I looked at the Cache Valley Association of Realtors report on average prices, and in May 2025, the average was $15,838. And I looked up how much income that would be needed to qualify for that mortgage. So the minimum income with few or no other debts is $7,000 a year. But the ideal income is $137,000 a year. So I recognize, well, we appreciate all of you being here and sharing your input. We're also in a position to think about the future and plan for future growth. And how to make it more affordable for people. There's a study that came out that the Utah home average price by 2030 would be $958,000. That's statewide. But Utah has the 9th most expensive housing market in the country. So it's a great place to live. You know, it's a great place to live. That's why we're here. But we also need places for our kids and grandkids to live.
Thank you. Troy.
I think my main concern on this development was regarding the water. I have a friend that live on the west side. I know some of the pain that they had with the flooding and stuff. And from things that Tom has went over, it sounds like a lot of thought and effort mitigating that flood potential on the yearly occurrence. So, and that was kind of like, thanks for speaking that.
Thank you. They said the water shares are gonna be given to the city, that's the development part. Does that include the water shares for the 6.4 acres too?
Yes. Yeah, that's in the proposed development agreement.
So would the 6.4 acres keep water shares for irrigating?
If the city chose to, we could, right?
And if it, I'm assuming once it's dedicated, given to the city, can it be rezoned as agricultural, it's 5 acres or 5 acres of these?
It could be rezoned, but the reason why it's being proposed to just put it in the development agreement. It's just to true up the open space subdivision and the regulations within that, so you have to have it zoned R2A in the entirety. Yeah, so. Yes, the city could do that, but rather than kicking the can down the road and saying, okay, well, yeah, we'll rezone that ag later. We felt it would be better to just be explicit up front on what the intended use was and just allow it.
Question for Levi on on Brett's comment earlier on the conditional approval requiring the open space subdivision. Would part of that be a failback to the current zone if within 5 years, if nothing happens? Or
Yeah, it's really up to you how you want to craft that. That could be. I guess the question you want to ask is, do you want this type of development, specifically open space subdivision? Or are you okay with something more in line with like right next door Heritage Crossing, that scale? If you really don't want that, you want the preservation of open space, and that's part of a package deal, then I would suggest to then do a conditional rezone. It's just be cognizant of the ongoing monitoring of that, because that does things. I think there was a gentleman that talked about Elkhorn subdivision and some of the controversy with that. I know that if we at the city tried to go back and get the documentation on what happened at the time of Elkhorn subdivision, that would be difficult. Now it's recorded and we could record it on the property, but if you get into, if there's a lot of nuances there, 20 years down the line, it gets a little bit difficult to administer is just one thing I would caution on a conditional rezone.
Any other questions? Council? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion for approval of the recommendation for ordinance 2526 on the rezone from R2 to R2A.
With the conditions recommended by staff.
Well, there were no conditions for the rezone. Sorry, I put everything on there. Yeah.
There's been a motion by Troy and a second by Karina. Any other discussions?
Yes, I do think we should put a conditional list that the rezone is permissible only on approval of the open space.
Do you want to make an amendment to the motion?
Yeah, I'd like to amend it to say that the recommendation for rezone is conditioned upon the proponent's approval of the open space subdivision.
I'll say it.
There's been a motion for an amendment to the motion by Tyler and a second by Troy. So that's on the table now. Is there any discussion?
Can I just clarify the motion? Is that approval of the preliminary plat, approval of the final plat? The actual subdivision of the property, recording of a subdivision. Okay. Just wanted to clarify
Yeah, so
that.
if they don't. Then the rezone is canceled.
Any other discussion? Yeah, Don? Are we okay with that?
Yeah, I mean,
I recommend that we explain to the people here what this process really is. This is a recommendation to city council, and city council is the authority in these decisions. So,
Correct. Yeah, this is. We're not approving the R from R2 to R2A. We're making a recommendation to city council that they approve it. And they're the legislative bodies that will actually make the decision what will happen. So, does that make sense? Okay. Any other discussion? Thank you, Tom. Okay, let's go ahead and vote. Want to do a roll call vote?
we typically don't do that in planning commission, yeah.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. It's 4-0, it passes. Moving on to the public hearing. Ordinances 25-27 development agreement between Field that will be 70 lot open space subdivision, 29.2 acres. You know, by west. Trying to move into public clarification before we get it.
They just know that your town can actually start talking.
Yeah, this is what the discussion about the 70 lot,
Actually,
the 70 lots happened. That one's strictly just rezoned.
Yeah, so this item, maybe I'll clarify. So the first item on that they just made a recommendation to city council on was to rezone the property. So that's just to change the zoning from R2 to R2A. Not a final decision because that goes to city council.
This is actually about the lot.
Yeah, this next item is for the development agreement for the fields at Nibley Meadows. And for the public that remains on the council, the reason typically we don't actually list this as a separate item. The reason this is listed as a separate item is because, again, this is a recommendation to city council, where the next item after this, the preliminary plat, is the final approval. So we split those two apart. And the reason why it is required that city council look at this and consider the development agreement is for two reasons. One, the city would take on additional open space, the open space. So the city doesn't have to do that. If the city decides, you know what, we don't need this, it's too much maintenance, we don't want it for whatever reason, the city could say no. That's a discretionary decision. The other reason is what this exception to the city code, and really it's to the animal land use regulations, which I would say isn't necessarily essential for the subdivision, but it does clean it up and make it so that it can be used for what it's proposed to be used for, which is the housing of animals. I guess you could put chickens and ducks on the property, but you couldn't put horses if without this exception, without violating the city code. So those are the two reasons. Now, everything else on this development agreement is also part of the package that goes to city council. But just want to be clear, like that's why this is a separate item and is being considered separately from the subdivision itself.
With that, we'll open a public hearing. I have Justin.
So he signed up on the list, I think it was the first list.
Gotcha. Okay. There's nobody else on the list. Let's open up the public hearing. please come forward, state your name and.
Let me just clarify real quick before we get into this. So again, the last one was just approval to change from R2 to R2A. And this one is solely the development as is presented in the notes.
This is
The 70.
no size the sign, but the exception to the ordinance is we allow large animals on it.
And it's the whole agreement.
6 acres. That is intended for.
Among other things, there's some performance measures on participation in the runoff management plan and things like that, but this is pretty much the governing document for the subdivision, which will be heard in the next one.
Of the city council.
No, it's gonna be heard the next
And
next
that's what we
item.
don't find.
After this,
Next
after
one.
consideration of the agreement, then comes the subdivision itself.
Okay, so this is just a preliminary before you guys will decide and you'll recommend that to the city, or that would be fine.
No,
Does that make
so,
sense?
so the planning commission is the approval authority for preliminary plat. Once they approve it, it's actually the city manager that's the approval authority. It used to be city council until recently, but state code changed that said city council can't get involved in subdivisions after. Well, city council can't get involved in subdivisions after outside of a rezone or a development agreement such as this, which involves the dedication of open space and an exception to our code. There's that one exception. So for those two reasons, that's why it's going to city council. That's all I was explaining, but really there's a lot more detail in this agreement. It's the governing document for the development in general.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it is.
And I tried-
We're just trying to follow the rules.
I tried to kind of through the plans, at least I assume that I put them on the website, was the approved plan and all that, but I mean, I guess, am I speaking to the actual 70 homes and then the ag change? Really, is that it, or is it just the ag change? I want to understand, I guess, I think it's just as confusing.
Sorry, this was buried in like the 28 slides I gave on this. The development agreement terms are summarized on the screen in front of you. So I mentioned those first two already, so I won't rehash that. Developers required to install a fence. They're required to give water shares, provide street trees, build a canal and trail, provide this runoff management plan. These are the main. There is some more detail in there. For example, the restrictions on the open space. So it's this. What is this? The public hearing is for this agreement. I could bring it up. It's going to be a lot more words on the paper. This is a summary of those words that are within the development agreement.
No, thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think everybody was just as confused, but.
It's confusing.
It's a lot, but right, yeah.
So again, Kyle on 2984 Stonebridge Drive, Nibley, Utah. So again, my property is other side of the fence of this. One question I would ask you guys, since we're actually addressing this, that I didn't get clarified in the last discussion that was happening was, you mentioned the canal has a right, there's a right of way. I think you were trying to speak in legalese, which I get it. But the canal, as Mr. Rigby was asking about, goes basically behind his property and it goes out to Maloof. And the thing that didn't make it, that I was unclear of, and maybe you guys can clarify this, is basically, are you saying that we've got a right of way there and that whoever deals with this canal is gonna dig through their properties to take down fences, whoever homes that are in the way, to make that canal go to the Maloof, or to the south side of Maloof? So that's a concern that I have on that. I think, and I don't know that that was very clear before. I'm still against this whole development plan. I know it's considered open space by the definition or textbook. But, I mean, a drainage canal, that's not, or a drainage property, that 3 acres, whatever, the back corner, that's not open space. That's just grass that's there to direct water. And the farm, I mean, yeah, like it was mentioned earlier, it benefits a few people. So I don't consider that open space. I would consider more of exists like storage For these other lots where you've got larger spaces between homes, I consider that more of an open space than, and I know the definition is against them. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I really don't. I mean, if we have to choose, which devil we want the worst, I mean, I guess leaving the farm there would be better, but I don't love the 70 homes. I think that's gonna destroy my property value. Because that's too many homes and vehicles. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Is there anyone else would like to make a comment?
Okay, John Smith, live just west, so when you're talking about, that flood. I was there, I was one of those guys. Her house, she currently lives in that 3 sump pumps that were blown, right? The house across from me, we were building a dam with sand mines. I'm sure some of the people from city council came. I live right across from them. When the Loose Foundation got put in, I now have a flooding basement. So my question is, what is going to be done north and south to keep that, not just the top water, but also the water that's running underneath? I think you've provided a couple things. Sorry, I don't know why I'm emotional. But we watched 5 foot of water spray out of the bottom stairs of my neighbor's house because there's so much hydrostatic pressure. Aside from developing the houses, I just want to know what's going to mitigate that north and south up against those houses. If you've been out to I don't know their address, across the street from me, there's the house that burned down. Okay, you guys know where I'm talking. They actually put a giant barrier in the backyard and side yard between the current lot to help mitigate that. That's a temporary fix. That's a dam. There is kind of a ditch that runs along there. Is there plans for a drain, like French drain or something to kind of protect and mitigate the water from that development? Like,
Anybody else, please comment.
So some of you know me because I've called the city, but I own the home now that goes with the horse ranch. I will say, based off of what was proposed before with the water.
Can you state your name?
All right, Danelle Morrison. It's nice to see that there's a proposal for where the water can go, because what I saw last time was just a subdivision with 45 homes and no retention pond, no open space. So I think what I've seen is better. 70 is a lot. But what I do like to say is my home is low, right? So if the new proposal gets put in, there's, I guess, storm drains around me. So I won't be the lowest spot because there's a road next to me and in essence, farm behind. So my fear is if we don't propose this, the existing homes that are lower will get flooded, which is the hideaway, their backyards will be flooded, because if the original 45 plots go in, they'll all raise their yards and it'll just push the water more into Maple Valley. I have another home I live in at 1509 and was remodeled our basement twice because of the water coming up, not so much because of rain. So what I see is better than what I've seen in the past, as long as there's a good way for all of that water to truly go to the storm drain or to them. And more as a side note, because you posted that on the website, I know I went there, but there's a lot of curious people coming to look. So I'm gonna put a private driveway because I own the driveways to the barns. I'm not necessarily gonna follow through with anything. The city's welcome to go back there and look at what you need to do, but I'm hoping to slow down some of the traffic. That's it. Thanks.
Anyone else would like to make this?
Sorry if we disturbed you. I know I was one of that.
What's going on there?
I hope you understand.
Please restate your name.
Deputy Bundy. the F 146% semicircle, which is directly where that open area be. I really hope you understand the water there. It takes, I just would like to help you understand that I take two city grade generator pumps. Have you seen those? They're like generator activated pumps, two, in my backyard. And I pump water through big pipes like this big from my backyard onto the street. Neighbors will let you know how much water is in my backyard. And would I like for this development to improve the situation we all experience on the west side? Absolutely. But I do not see where the water is going to be. Sorry, I still stop talking to my. I do not see where the water is going. How we are actually going to eliminate the water. But I have videos and pictures from 2 years ago, and every year I take them of my children in water like this in my backyard. Nothing has been improved with construction of the newer developments. And it's all of us on the west side. It's not just me. My house, yes, it sits very low. On the west side, I receive the most water. City grade with pipes, green ones that you put when you could build developers. Like this, water flows from each side of my house. So will this development improve our water situation, or is it going to make it worse?
Are you pumping now?
I'm still pumping. I'm pumping there.
Our neighbor used to in July water their grass with it. And that's
And this was the dry year.
This was 19 years ago, they were doing that, and when the rest of the development went in, it got a lot worse. We didn't have water issues, we didn't have pressure traps. When it started being built around us, we started seeing that, and then that year, 2017? I couldn't believe that was my neighbor, I'm actually in that video, bringing sandbags for my neighbor who wasn't even home. He had to break into his house with his permission to get into the basement and watching 5 feet of water spraying out. And I'm not against development, just there needs to be some really, deep thought on that. And I'm sure you have, like, you're an engineer, you're smarter than I am, but please tell us.
Situation. Because we if all the water is going to be looking at it is all going to accumulate right then. If it like right, if I can show you my house, the one that we're placing, which is going to be a beautiful view. I just buy a kayak and go swimming. It's right outside my house. And it's scary. We need to develop it.
Is there anyone else? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing this time. And try to answer some questions here as we go. Have you looked at their water issue in their house pumping now?
So I'm gonna ask a couple of questions. The first question on the canal piping, sorry if it's legalese, but that's basically what it is. There's certain rights that people have that allow them to continue flows through there, as well as improve those flows because they have they're a purveyor of water. So in the case of the canal company, so in the case of the canal company, they have the right to go in and pipe their system. And the current route of that system comes along this ditch here and into these 2 yards. That's the current, and then it splits there and it goes right along this way. And it goes to the north. So there's that perpetual easement allows them to both maintain it, improve it. There's also the historic right of this property that all the stormwater that's been collected, groundwater, flows in that normal direction. Well, they have that right to collect and control that flow to pre-developed rates. And that's what that pond is doing. So did I answer the question this time?
Yeah, I apologize, I'm trying to say that. Except I don't think it's clear that that was what you were saying, is that they have the right way to dig through their property. I understand that you guys have the rights, the canal company has any easements, I'm aware of it. There's one that goes through the parent room. I just didn't think it was clear that what the intention was, and the plan is that they're gonna dig that canal through those properties. And then whatever you guys have to do to or the homeowner has to redo to put it back the way it was. That's right.
Oh, okay, so I did fill you in that point, so.
It's not like
Yeah, so there's. Getting into the weeds here, but there's two different sorts of rights. There's a public utilities and PUE. Those are usually recorded through a conveyance document or shown on a plat or a subdivision. Now, if any disturbance through maintenance, improvements, or whatever that is, they come through and do any work there, they are bound to restore those things. Now, canal companies and things are different. They're not required to restore that. They have the right to go in, just do mass mayhem. But I don't know of anyone that does. I can't say what's gonna happen here because the city will hold them accountable for anything in here. And I said earlier that I'm negotiating for a trail easement and things with the neighboring property. And we're looking to maybe relocate that canal ditch there underneath the trail rather than have to go through the historic prescriptive easement. And in that case, it would be conveyed through a document. And in that case also gives a little more control to the city that we can now make sure that the restoration is done right. Things to protect the property that's impacted there. Hopefully I answered the question there.
yes, no, thank you.
So the other one was the comment on 70 homes. If I remember right on the math, there can be up to 50 homes without any open space. Or more.
Correct.
And so.
In the 19 acres.
In the 19 acres. So there's 20 less, it's. I don't know, but you're losing out on the open space. I'm not saying one way or another, I'm just kind of pointing that out. That they can come in here and not have to go through this process even. It's just a simple subdivision and they can have up to 50 homes if I remember right. And then the city also loses the ability that we negotiated all these mitigations on the flooding, on the piping and this master plan stormwater system. We lose all of that if this open space R2A subdivision goes away. So I'm not saying this is the right thing to do. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do. I'm just pointing out facts. The groundwater issue for Dorian, Miss Bundy. We're very aware of what's going on there. I have a video from 2017 flood. I sent it to the engineer and I'm gonna put the engineer in the limelight right now. Michael Taylor and I have worked for months together on this. He's been very responsive. I think he fully understands what's going on with this. Michael, would you just give if this is okay with the commission, is this okay? Michael, I want to just give you the opportunity to tell what work has been done, how we've mitigated some things. And then the question on the north and south, what we're doing, there's gonna be a road there. That road's gonna be 3 to 4 feet higher than the existing ground. That's gonna help with that surface flow. There's also, under my insistence, Michael agreed to put in a land drain that goes north and south right on the west boundary over here. So.
Between our houses and the open space.
Yeah, right in that area. So Michael, take 1 minute, not too much longer, but kind of go through the process, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate the commendation, Tom. Yeah, so I mean, we have tried to be as comprehensive as possible here. I've personally worked on projects in this area for the last 10 years, having done a lot of work for the loop subdivisions. So I'm familiar with the issues. We've seen footage, we've seen something. Yeah, so I mean, as far as the drainage for the subdivision itself, the subdivision is gonna be built in a raised condition, 2 or 3 feet above existing grade. All of that is gonna drain to that pond, which is a retention pond. It'll be held there for a short period of time in a 100-year storm. That pond will be built above grade and then go through the regional drain, which will head out to the state west. We are piping a canal, which will reduce all of that leakage and infiltration that's happening now, raising the water table. And we're putting in that land drain along the entire western boundary of the subdivision. So on the French drain, you know, it's got a perforated pipe, it's got a column of gravel, water migrates underground and above, hits the trench drain, goes into that pipe, it will go north to that corner and then straight west a half mile off the slough. We're also addressing the Hideaway stormwater pond and the Heritage Crossing pond at the project. Those will be piped through this system as well. Currently that water goes nowhere. It just says, but those 2 ponds will get drained into this master system and head west. And then there is that low point there in Hideaway 2, which is going to be, there's some earthwork there. The landscaping between the development. I think that we've tried to be seriously as comprehensive as we possibly can with this approach. I don't know if there's any aspects that I'd love to cover there.
No, thanks. You did point out a few things that I failed to mention was the existing ponds in the Hideaway and the Heritage Crossing. Those are going away with this.
Yeah, and there will be no basins on this subdivision. We recognize that this is already an ongoing regional issue. We are trying to fix that as part of this project. The developer is collaborating in a significant amount of offsite, should this be approved, offsite infrastructure, which is typically not part of their scope. You know, they very much are interested in being part of the solution, not the problem.
Commissioner, do you have any questions for him while he's here? I'd say take advantage of it, please. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
There was one other question that was posed to me out in the hall. He was a little too shy to ask.
Okay.
And it may not be at this point in the development agreement, but it was with regard to the width of the road. Will on-street parking be allowed? And we can address that now, or we can wait till the plat.
Let's wait till the plat.
Thank you.
And there's a parking work. Any other comments from the council? Questions?
I was just address what said. Josh, what's kind of the plan for CCNR style homes? Or are we talking vinyl, aluminum, we talking stucco and hardy plank siding? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, we're discussing that right now, so I
mean, I know it's not something we can impose upon you, but just for the community who wants to know.
yeah, I would say similar with the surrounding areas.
HOA?
No HOA. You know, they, being in real estate over 20 years in the valley, HOAs haven't been overly popular in Cache County.
I do have a question. What would be the average square footage of this range?
Oh, I'll bet they'll be anywhere from 12 to 2,400.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
I did have a question. Tom kind of touched on this. But I just wanted to make sure like all the different items were kind of covered. So if city council doesn't approve the open space subdivision, and this reverts back to an R2 zone, the proponent, or maybe they decide to sell and another developer comes in and decides to just build a regular R2 subdivision. What would be required if it was just a normal zone? Like, what are we losing out? You mentioned, obviously, all the open space, the horse stables, all that gets torn down. The trail, the French drain, can you speak to some of those items?
So the trail is required regardless. We require it in all subdivisions. I think we get more opposition from developers and questioning the validity of requiring it, the proportionality of, you know, that there's some state code on exactions, what we can exact, and it needs to be roughly proportional to the impact. And but I would think in an R2 subdivision, we could still require the trail. We couldn't require any more open space. I guess I'll let Tom speak to the other.
Yes, the other things, they'd still be required to manage stormwater to a certain degree, but we're not gonna get, it'd be more difficult to get the regional, this master plan stormwater system. This underground land drain, we basically lose negotiating power because a rezone is a legislative decision, which we have a little bit of negotiating power there. This development agreement is also a legislative decision. We have that negotiating power. We lose that if it's just a standard subdivision.
As a standard R2, you said it'd be approximately 50 lots already. This is a standard two.
Well, that would be for R2A. It'd be 50 lots. For R2, I don't know if it's about 40, I'm guessing, is what could fit in there. Maybe 43 or so, you know, 40 to 50.
Really mitigate. Take a 5-acre lot and 20 additional units. It's like water control and Morgan Farms.
If it helps, first map has 44 homes on
Right, and that's probably that's probably for R2A. I'm guessing for R2 you're fitting 35, 36 homes, but I mean that hasn't been necessarily vetted, but.
Indeed. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing that, do we have a motion?
Motion. Make a motion that. Make a motion to approve the development agreement with the Nibley Hill subdivision, semi-lot open space subdivision. Approximate portion of 5 west, 3200 south, with the conditions recommended by.
Is there a second?
That'd be to recommend approval, just to clarify.
Yeah.
Recommend approval.
There's been a motion to recommend approval of this by Tyler and a second by Karina. Any other discussions? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Favor say aye. Aye. 4-0 passes. Moving on to item number 7, discussion and approval of preliminary plot plus for the build of Nibley on 70 lot open space subdivision, approximately 19.23 acres at 1405 west, 3200 south. We open up for discussion with the council. Sure. This is where you can cover your.
I don't know if there's anything else I need to add that hasn't already been said.
So there was a question posed to me out in the hallway of on-street parking. So the proposed street section through the local portion that loops through into Heritage Crossing from 3200 south to 12th west. They're proposing 29 foot of pavement. It's a 60-foot right of way with 29 foot of pavement. That does allow parking usually on one side. If you start parking on both sides, it kind of narrows things down into one lane. I think they were concerned that it would be. Oh, yes, yes.
It's the preliminary plat. I could pull up just a second. I think I'll pull up the document because I believe it does show the actual cross section.
The standard 66 foot, 29 feet basketball.
60 feet is their typical local road, yes.
This is the same as
Curb and gutter side.
almost every.
Yeah, it's curb and gutter, so, yeah.
Just a second, let me.
And in this case, it's 29 foot of asphalt. We do have another section that's 60 foot that has 22 foot of asphalt. And the developer gets to choose which one they prefer. So the section here that we're looking at is 29 foot of asphalt, which would allow parking on one side and cars to travel, but we usually don't post on no parking on one side or the other, so it's just first come, first serve. And if two cars are parked on opposing on opposite sides, and it narrows it down to, they're gonna have to wait for an oncoming, almost like an advisory lane. This sort of section is ideal to slow traffic down, especially with the parking. It's more ideal to have no parking on the street and a narrow lane, but in this case, with that parking, it will self-regulate the traffic speeds by kind of giving that side friction. So the more parking is the better. And I think the concern was it's gonna be too narrow to allow parking and people driving. But I think in a neighborhood, it's a benefit to have that friction and that narrowness.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of precedence there, because if you look at the majority of the recent subdivisions, Nibley Farms, this is the section that they use, for example. This is the majority of subdivisions, this is what you see. Some of them, like you say, are a little narrower. There aren't any local roads recently that have been approved that are wider than this. There's some older ones that have, 32 feet of asphalt, for example, but for a local street, we don't have any standard cross sections that are greater than 29 feet of asphalt.
With the known water issues we have, are they proposing curb and gutter or swells?
It's curb and gutter on each side there.
Is that a requirement, or is that just the discussion? Because I think that we should.
It's just the design.
Again, that the dam, keep it from continuing to flow laterally, I think we should make that a requirement.
That's a good point.
If we have swells, we can just fill up, and then we don't trap and capture it.
That's a great point. I don't know that it was ever mandated. This was the design selected by the developer and the designer.
Mike, what do you have as far as like, are you doing swells or curb and gutter or sewer?
Yeah, I mean, the current plan is certainly curb and gutter. I think, I would personally recommend conveying stormwater out of the roadway. Your bad infiltration in these areas, clay soils. Support.
Yeah, the swells don't work in this.
No.
I mean, we can make that a requirement upon the future conditions like that. Yeah, I agree with the engineer.
It's already in.
But I see that change.
Yeah, I mean, it's already in the preliminary plat. So I think when you approve it, this is the design you approve. It doesn't have swales. It can't. No. And I mean, unless they just kill the whole thing, for example, and they don't approve the rezone and they don't approve but what's in front of you is you are the approval authority. It just needs to be a conditional approval, because it can't go forward without the rezone and without the development agreement.
On the west side.
I don't know if we want to restrict it. I think it'd be good to allow it on both sides. No, that's great. No, and I did request that in one of the first plan reviews, and they agreed to put in a curb cut and provide an area for parking.
Aware of this the property donation.
Yeah, so I actually met with them, was it a week or two ago? I brought them in and we walked through the structures with the structural engineer. Actually, it was after we visited with the structural engineer. I had a separate meeting with Roxy and Mike, and they were really excited. They really wanted to try to save the open stables that I mentioned. If we can go back to the aerial. So the roadway is gonna be going right near this area, so we couldn't spare these open stables here, but we're able to sever them and have this smaller building with this larger stable building right here. This one, that's gotta go. There's no way we're gonna be able to repair that one. It's fallen down. There's structural failures. It's just a pole barn, and it's being held up by straps, like ratchet straps and things. This one here, yes. This one here will be able to salvage, but it did have the same deficiencies identified as here. There's some lateral deficiencies, some vertical deficiencies in beams and trusses and things, but these were, we just couldn't spare those.
Yeah. That's it. So is there a breezeway through that? Those barns? I mean, like they walk in and there's a stable.
No, these ones are just open, stable. So it's just kind of like an awning, picture an awning where they can go under.
Yeah.
And then there's some panels through here that.
But the other one?
The other one are actually, this one in here is actually stalls with stable.
Breezeway through
Yeah, yeah.
I'd like to make a recommendation to the committee that, I don't know if you've read the rest of the agenda, but state passed some ordinances on parking. We used to require 2 parking stalls in addition to what's in the garage. You can no longer use that as a minimum. But I think because of the densities, acknowledgement that we have high density, more cars, more people, I think we need to set a minimum on this one as 3 parking stalls. With the snow removal, the concerns we have, you're not gonna be able to, we have to have off-street parking. And if we do that, we can make that administratively on this list when part of the approval, and regardless of what we do with the parking ordinance later, it can still stick to this
I would say,
one. I just.
sorry, I would say, sorry, I think that would be something to put into the development agreement. I don't know if it's appropriate to impose that on the preliminary plat, if it's not required by code. Now,
Did we approve a final development agreement, or did we approve?
you made a recommendation to city council for approval already, so I don't know.
Yeah,
This would be.
1/8 acre lot, 12,000 square foot lot, like there. We need to ensure that, like, I lived in neighborhoods in Cedar Hills like this, and the on-street parking is a huge problem. We need to require more off-street parking, so whatever happens in the next discussions won't impact and change it.
Yeah, now in practice, the only time they wouldn't get 3 parking stalls is if they had a 1-car garage. And one, if they have two cars and they're gonna have 2 stalls, so really they'll have 4 stalls. I haven't seen a 1-car garage in quite a while for a single family home in Nibley. I don't know if I've seen any, but
I don't.
that's just.
I just want to ensure there's plenty of.
The other option is that's one of the next items on the agenda, but you could require that of all single family homes. Right. I guess I'm just saying the preliminary plat, this is an administrative approval. If there's something that doesn't meet code, this is the time to say, oh, it doesn't meet that. You need to change this or you need to address this. But to add additional requirements, I would say that would be something to impose in the development agreement that city council would consider.
Levi, this is a question for you. Would it be appropriate if a commissioner had the concern that they could express that directly to the city council? Because
I mean, that's another option.
the city council will be considering this at their next council meeting.
Yeah, because I mean, this is 70 lots. In the current market, this is gonna be built out in multiple phases. And as we saw with Stonebridge residents here, it changes as things go based on the economic factors. So we're saying right now, there's no single family, maybe a single car garage. 5 years when this thing wraps up, we don't know what kind of conditions.
Stonebridge is still working on their phases.
Yeah, and that's 15 years.
And that's 15 years, so.
So we already recommended approval for the development agreement, so we can't open that back up. So the only thing I can do is go stand in front of city council and say you need to consider this.
I just don't know if it's appropriate to do it at this stage of an administrative approval of a preliminary plat. If they meet the code, they meet the code, and that's imposed at the time of building permit. Those parking requirements.
The proponent from the agreement from the development agreement require 3 off-street parking. In the Can the commissioner make a recommendation to revisit that and just amend it?
How does that work? How does that work, Kellen? I don't know if we've done that.
Stop her. And not to first on recalling a previous item that's approved and.
Yeah, that hasn't happened the 5 years I've been here, so I don't know.
What can you recommend to the city manager?
Recommend. Well, I don't know if that was a concern that was expressed. Yeah. Sorry.
We have a motion, we have a motion on this, do we?
Yes. You have. a
On the
motion.
floor.
We do have. a
Well, no,
motion.
we don't have a motion now, but we will need to make one.
Yeah, we need a motion.
Necessarily.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. The lot the subdivision on approximately 2-3 acres at Worth Northwest 32.
Okay, we have a motion, is there a second?
Were there any?
Yeah, there's several findings and conditions that are recommended by staff that I would suggest. Let me pull those up. Yeah, so here's the findings. I mentioned them previously, so I don't know if I need to rehash everything. But just in general, they meet the city standards. Open spaces benefit and support the general plan. And then this is a list of conditions that were also mentioned previously.
Including the conditions recommended by staff.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
There's been a motion by Troy to approve the plat with the conditions stated by staff and a second by Karina. Any other discussions? Seeing none, we'll take it to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. 4-0, it passes. And moving on, to item number 8.
So Levi, what are your time, you guys?
Thank you.
When will that be discussed, basically?
Sure, you could add something. When it will be discussed by city council, the next meeting is July 31st. A little over 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, moving to the public hearing. For ordinances 25-23, amending NCC 19.24.160 parking recommendation for NCC 19.24.250 accessory dwelling unit standards, including parking requirements for single family and two family dwellings. Levi, you want to introduce us to that?
Yeah, so this is in direct response to Senate Bill 181, which was enacted this year by the Utah State Legislature. There's a number of different regulations within this Senate bill, but there are two restrictions in staff's review that the city is not currently compliant with. Although we just went through a very extensive process on updating the city's parking code, the state has come in and imposed two restrictions, which, at least from the review of staff, we're not compliant with. So one is specified municipality may not restrict two-car garage for satisfying two parking spaces as part of a minimum parking space requirement. So for a single family home, it would within the ordinance, it basically states that two stalls are required, but you cannot count the garage space or carport space. The state has come in and said, no, you have to count that. So it's simply crossing that out. I would say that you could choose to add an additional stall if you think, as Tyler mentioned. But staff's recommendation is just to cross it out. Part of that is when we did do all that research, just looking at the empirical data and looking at the, of at the time we used the ITE, so the Institute of Transportation Engineers, parking generation manual. 2 stalls is just right for single family homes. So that's the 85th percentile is right about 2 stalls. So in the vast majority, that's going to be sufficient for this type of kind of suburban context. So anyway, that's what staff's recommendation is just simply to cross that out. It would also, so the other thing that is being recommended is that 1 additional stall is required if there is an ADU or a secondary dwelling. Currently, it requires 2 stalls if it's a detached ADU, but only 1 stall if it's attached. The state has said that you can only require 1 stall for an attached ADU, but for some reason, detached, they said, oh, it's okay. We're not going to tell you how many stalls. So the city at this point has said, we require 2, but at this time, staff is recommending to just say 1, just simplify it. I don't think there's any justification for 2 for a detached ADU compared to, for example, an attached that would probably likely have the same demand for parking. So that's what's being proposed there. They've also said a specified municipality may not restrict an unobstructed tandem parking space from satisfying 2 parking spaces as part of a minimum parking space requirement. Currently within the accessory dwelling unit, the ADU code, it says that it cannot block another parking space. So that's not compliant with this provision of state code. So we don't count, for example, that there's a 2-car, well, we currently don't count the 2-car garage anyway. But let's say someone has a long driveway and they've got enough room for 2 parking stalls. And let's say they had enough room for another stall or 2, we wouldn't count those. They would have to put it on the side of the property somewhere else. And it does, and I think in some instances, if it's constrained, it makes it more difficult to provide that parking. And the state just has said you can't do that. You have to count that tandem parking.
So the long driveway, you do have to count.
You do. Yep, that's what the state has said. So these proposed amendments would bring the city in compliance with state code. And I think there is a little bit of wiggle room if you want to discuss that, where you have some wiggle room if you want to go a little bit different than what staff is recommending. But what's in front of you is what I've explained there, and it seems appropriate and efficient and in support of the city's goals and general plan, and being cognizant of affordability. Parking does impact the affordability. It's not just putting in the driveway, but it's the land. All of that adds to the cost of housing. And this is, I feel like, more appropriate and more in line with the other parking changes that were just recently passed. So although the state's telling us to do it, staff is in support not begrudgingly on this time. Sometimes we do it because we have to. I think in this case, these are positive changes.
Thank you. Open the public hearing. Anybody like to make a comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Still.
Commissioners, if I may interrupt, I just wanted to ensure that my best educated guess was correct, so I checked with my senior city recorder. Since it passed unanimously, it can be, well, actually, it doesn't need to be unanimous, but everyone was on the prevailing side. So we just need someone on the prevailing side to make a motion to reopen that up and to provide discussion, and then amendments can be made, such as what was proposed earlier and then passed again. So it just needs to be someone from the prevailing side, which luckily on that one, everyone was.
For the previous.
For the development.
If you want to revisit that one.
If that was Commissioner O'Brady's question, if we could open it back up, yes.
Okay.
Can I?
We want to open that up now.
I mean, I'd like to just get it, I know I'm not gonna be in, I'm gonna be out of town, so I won't get the call. So,
I should be around.
if you can show up, talk to the council and say because of the density of homes and the not have on. Then we don't need to go.
Okay, yeah, I'll be there. Cross my fingers, if nothing bad happens.
I mean, I would say we reduce the amount of parking spaces so we can enforce more tickets for stolen.
Did you get one?
No, but all my neighbors did. It was 60 degrees.
No, I get for parking next to a lot, right? And sidewalk. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. We'll open up item number 9, discussion consideration for a recommendation of ordinances 25-23 and amending these ordinances for parking. Any discussions?
I disagree with analysis of what you said, Levi, because we just rewrote the ordinances. We were very specific to not include the garage spaces because we want to ensure the ADUs, the second homes, the basement apartments have plenty of adequate parking to keep the cars off the road because we feel that is a concern for the safety of neighborhoods. And this neighborhood specifically, you say you can't put cars on both sides. And the economics, garages will be removed, things will be removed. You look at other urbanization of areas, you will go to a single car garage. So I agree, we gotta comply with the state code, and we're gonna count the 2 spaces in the garage and not exit. But we need to increase the minimum parking requirements to minimum 3 for a single family home and 4 for a 2-family home. Again, we hired a code enforcement officer to make sure people don't park in the wintertime. We have to require the code will allow for the conditions in which we live, to satisfy the needs of our residents. I've been in those neighborhoods on 8-acre lots, and when you get, it is a dangerous neighborhood for little kids and affordability if you have cars parked on both sides of the road. So let's comply, but I am absolutely against having anything less than a minimum of 3 spots for a single family dwelling and 4 spots for a 2-family.
I disagree. I think, you're talking about having cars parked on both sides being more dangerous. We actually just had a wedding on our street, this past week. And the entire street had cars parked both sides down the whole street. And it was fantastic. I loved it because normally cars would fly down our road way fast.
Now that was a one-time event, you don't have to.
Yes, but
that's the difference.
But with the wedding and the dump cars parked both sides, cars driving through the neighborhood were tremendously slower, 5 miles an hour from through our neighborhood. Way safer for pedestrians, for kids, anybody playing there, walking around, people coming to and from their cars or whatever. It's way safer in terms of traffic safety. And then on requiring. On your point, requiring parking for our citizens, it is up to the citizen on how many vehicles they have, right? So. If you're requiring more, you're imposing additional costs on a family that may not want or need the space. So.
We're talking 9 feet. That's the minimum requirement for state is 9 feet.
And then, yeah, 9 by 18, so, yeah, about close to 200 square feet of the, there's a cost.
You gotta do parking. We got a proponent right here just really said how dangerous this for your hand bike. If you're under 4 feet tall, it's insane to think it's not more dangerous to have 2 cars parking on both sides. If you're over 4 feet tall, then someone needs to. And these are gonna be affordable housing, families with kids. Young kids. Like I'm okay with small lots, I'm not okay with the streets being loaded up, especially in the summertime when everyone's out on the ground, running from house to house back. But again, I'm one voice, you're one voice, Karina, and what do you guys think?
So what would that look like, so, for 3 spots on a single family home? When you're looking at a house, with a 2-car garage with a.
That's interesting. Automatically default to 4. You say 3, if you have a 2-car garage, 2's in the garage, 1, but it's always gonna be. If you do a 1-car garage, then you're gonna have 1 parking space in front of the garage and 1 on the street. And it really doesn't change the functionality with the 56 inch. But again, I've been here for 8 years, I'm really afraid of the unintended consequence. I'm relevant. I would rather put in the code now than learn we made a mistake. But I mean, the setback, what's the minimum setback on open space? Like 8?
It's 20 feet for, over side yard, it's 5 feet.
Yeah.
For this one, for the one that was proposed, it scales depending on the development. It's 15 in the subdivision that was proposed tonight. It again, it depends on the lot size. There's within the open space for the rear, but for the front, it's 20.
Yeah.
20 feet, so it's enough room for a vehicle.
Requirement in 3. You park. So I really don't think it's gonna change the function, but I just hate to make a mistake and.
Yeah, I think if it's not gonna make a difference, I don't see a reason on imposing it. And if you do impose it, that it is additional cost should people not conform. So if somebody came in and said, I want to build my home, and we are only a 1-car family, I only need a 1-car garage. Now I'm forced to build a space for 4 cars.
Because if they're forced to build it, they're forced to buy it, they can live somewhere else.
If I'm building my house, right, I have to build that into.
Or buy a lot somewhere else.
Yes.
But that one person subdivision with 1 car shouldn't impact those 6 million people.
I don't see how they're impacting other people. They only have the 1 car, they're the least impacted people on the street.
Well, I think we confirm yes, confirm no, we got 2 other people.
So I have a question, so there's some J. Thomas homes in Nibley. They have the home with accessory dwelling and apartment. So there's 2-car home, they have, little side yard, is what you would call it. ADU. So would that be enough in your view?
By the statute, yeah, that would be 2 cars in it, if you count 2 inside the garage. And then if you have a 2-car garage, you're automatically have 2 cars on the garage. So that would satisfy the statute. So the current inventory stock of the building right now would automatically comply. this is not potentially, this is trying to predict the future.
ADU currently require 2 cars,
Total four.
total 4.
Yeah, you still have four.
Between the primary home and I don't know any families that don't have 2 cars. Then the one.
What the current housing stock we have. Not, no, there's nowhere in cash, well, there's low and micro, that's in 6 West. But, in Nibley, there's not an issue, in Nibley. Just where we are talking about smaller lot density, I think we need to just make sure we keep cars off the street as much as possible.
Well, if we wanna keep cars off the street, we could just require 22-foot streets, and there's no street cars, or have cars on the street.
Anyways, Claire, what do you think?
Yeah, I was, when I was reading this, I was sad to hear it come down to reducing the number of cars parking, because I see people use their garage as another spare room, or they open a business in it, hair salon or something like that, which takes away parking, but it still counts as parking.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. We're not gonna go back and tell people if someone, and maybe we would deny a building permit if they took out that parking, if they didn't have adequate parking. But we would not count something that isn't parking as parking. And if city had the chance to review that, now if they went in and they did it without a permit, that's another thing. But that's something, maybe that's a recommendation of something for us to consider, is when, because people do convert their garages. Hey, if they convert their garages, ensure that there's parking somewhere else. And we could do that as staff, at least if they get a permit.
The thing, the opposite, no, if they converted it to another bedroom or
Well,
sewing room. or
they should get a
building
permit.
room.
They should get a permit, but
But that's not even if it's not commercial, it's insulated and
Mhm.
they got lighting in there. They're not changing the structure of the building or anything. They're just using it for another purpose.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. If they just go in there and, I mean, garage band, I had a garage band. We pretty much lived in there in the summertime. Couches everywhere. We didn't need a building permit for that.
Converted garage, so.
it's colder, the heat's not as good, but.
I just share with my brother.
Do you think we increase the minimum to still be in compliance and keep the same code we have?
I don't think we need to reduce the ADU. Cause I see that being an issue down the road.
Well, and to be compliant though, we have to increase the minimum requirements, so that we can count for the garage spaces.
We have to increase, what are we at now, 2?
Well, the way the code reads now, is
Outside the garage.
2 parking spaces, not counting the garage.
Basically, yeah. And I can bring up the specific code language if you want to start making modifications to that.
You'd say. And then what that does is that will automatically count, if you have 2-car garage, you get 2 inside the garage, you get 2 outside the garage, just the way.
That, I do like that, because then you protect yourself from. And I guess you could deny a business license if somebody wants to open a salon or something in their garage.
Yeah, we can deal with that in the commercial code. Yes.
That just, I've seen families in Shadowbrook close their garage off to use the extra space for family living space. And that you don't know, the garage door is still there, they're insulated, they're lighted.
Those are all 3rd and half acre lots. though.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're talking.
they're a 3rd acre, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3rd acre. Versus.
I think maybe kind of getting to the spirit of the law of what the state is saying is they don't want cities meddling in what goes on behind those garage doors. Like just count it as parking space. It could be used as parking spaces. If they choose to use it for something else, they have a car, if they have somewhere else to put their cars, they can use it for something else.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where they're trying to get with this is like it was built originally for parking. So why not count it?
Yeah.
Even if it's not being used for that
They could
long
also
term.
Talking. Stuff like that, they've got built 5 feet with the 2 with cars. I think the intent stayed the same, if you got 2 cars right there on a townhome that is on the sidewalk, that counts as a parking, you don't have to do an additional. Don't think it contemplated Nibley when they made the sort.
Right, but they just, I don't think they want us to, because I think that justification of, oh, they're using it for storage or something else. That's why cities, including Nibley, have that baked into the code. And they're just saying, no, it was built as parking, counted as parking.
Could choose how to put. But then if it pushes them onto the grass for a violation of code, or on the street or winter time, for violating.
Which then limits the number of houses of parking, cars and houses.
Now, what I will comment that what Tyler, Tyler's suggesting, from the way I read state code, it is allowed to do that, not any higher than that though. Because once you get to 4, you can't get more than 4 for a 2-family. That's your max.
And still.
I think you do. If that's the way you want to go, like just to back up, I guess staff's recommendation is based upon the data that we gathered and the observed parking generation, which is about 2 stalls. If you go above that, yeah, you've got a cushion for when people do have more vehicles, and if you want to do that, you can. But weighing that out with the additional cost that could be imposed, as Troy mentioned, to someone that doesn't need that parking. They just outright required to build it.
Just not making it mandatory to have.
I would say, although this is a requirement now, the state's not going to come in and break down the door and tell us we're going to jail for not doing this tonight. So it's up to you what you want to do. Like, there's not a ton of urgency here. I think if you don't, at the time we don't pass it, and if the instance came where we weren't compliant, we would default to state code, and we would probably say basically what is in this ordinance. So whatever, I guess indecision doesn't necessarily say we default to what's here. We will default to the state code and not count the parking. But you can take your time, figure it out with this one.
I have 6. Maybe I'm not the best person for it, but 3 of them are show cars, or car shows and stuff, so. Obviously, I'm not gonna put them.
We're gonna start approving storage units then.
Yeah. I need to go to a storage unit, yeah, but it's safe. So, yeah, maybe we need to table it.
And just as a note, our city recorder has asked that we continue with a specific, I guess I'm.
Direction to.
Yes, direction for
direction for
staff.
staff.
Continue to the next meeting, continue until this has been done, if that makes sense, rather than tabling an item.
But continue, and sometimes it's direction to staff, sometimes it's,
Continue to the next meeting.
I mean, it sounds like,
Oh. Yeah. I know Brett's concerned about parking, because he makes sure he always can park in his garage.
and you got a stalemate, but, so what's your other option, right?
So,
I think you just do it.
Well, no, yeah, you need a motion. Yeah, you should make somebody, if that's what you choose to do.
We have a motion on the table. There's a second. There's a second, I can read it. There's a motion to table this item for parking till the next planning and zoning meeting by Tyler and a second by Karina. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
It's 3-1. Table it. Okay. Moving to item number 10, public hearing for ordinance 25-24, amending NCT 19.20.010, classification of new and unlisted uses, setting forth the progress for classification use of legislative action for new and unlisted uses. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so again, this is in reaction to state code, or yes, to the state legislature, Senate Bill 179. So they've required to have a process for reviewing a business use not listed as an approved use in existing ordinance of it's in some ways, this ordinance is formalizing what is already done and just putting a process in place, but it also adds another process. So I'll explain. The proposed ordinance would establish a process to classify uses. In this, it would make the city planner the authority for saying, if someone comes in and they describe what the use is, they look at the code, they say, okay, this is what this use is classified as. That this is already what is done when people apply for a business license. If I look at a business license application and determine it is a permitted use, planning commission never sees it. Now, if I do say, oh, it's a conditional use, and it does come to counts and it does come to planning commission, you could disagree with me, I suppose, and make I mean, I don't think that's ever happened, but you could say, you know what, this isn't the right classification. We're gonna call it something else. With this one, it just says the city planner is, and if they don't like that, if they could appeal it, and it would go to our appeal authority, and they would make a determination.
And that's kind of the situation I called about the wedding reception center, right?
Right.
Perfect example.
Yeah, that's a good example. That sometimes it's hard to determine where that is, but at the end of the day, someone's got to make a determination, and what's being proposed. And really, this is partly for efficiency. If they have to come to a planning commission meeting or a city council to discuss and determine what that use is, that's gonna really, I mean, it's 9:30 tonight. We'll probably, add an hour to each meeting to do that. So it's just saying the city planner will do that. If they don't like that, there is a process to appeal it. And it's an administrative, it's a legal process. So that would be kind of quasi judicial process of the appeal authority saying, you know what, no, I disagree with the city planner. It's actually this, if that ever happened. I don't really think it's going to be a huge issue. I don't know if anyone's really ever disagreed with staff on that determination, but this does have a process. A lot of the language that is in this ordinance, there's kind of a lot of words in this, and I can pull up the ordinance if you'd like. It was borrowed from Hurricane City, who recently adopted these ordinances, and just checking that against what's in state code. It basically just says, find out what their business is, find out what your ordinance says, what the definition is, and apply it. So there's that. Okay, thanks, yeah. So establishes that process. And then this next part is a little different. I was struggling with this one, but it is required by state code, so it is in there. It establishes a process for legislative action for new or unlisted business uses. So if someone comes in, let's say they have a retail shop of sorts, and it is unlisted, meaning it's not allowed in that zone. They could then say, oh, well, I want it to be allowed. Currently, what we would do is we say, okay, petition the city to amend the code. Well, the state has come up with a new process. It's not a code, it's not this, it's kind of separate from a code amendment, although it's very similar. They call it a legislative action for new or unlisted business uses. They're essentially going through the same process as a code amendment, but there's a time limit and the state actually doesn't require that it goes through planning commission. It has to go to city council. What is in the recommended ordinance is that it does go through planning commission, makes a recommendation, and then it goes to city council. And that whole process can't take longer than 60 days. So it needs to be pretty quick, relatively quick, right? A couple months. So it's got to get on the next agenda. Planning commission's got to consider it, whether to add it to that zone, potentially other zones. Same thing with it unlisted. Let's say it's just not on the chart. Currently, it's not permitted, so it's not gonna. My first answer to them would be, well, it's not allowed. Well, then they could say, I want it to be considered. Okay, we'll put it on the planning commission agenda. They'll determine whether to add it to the chart, and then it'll go to city council. Very similar to a code amendment. I would say the main difference here is that they can appeal that decision. I mentioned that they could appeal the classification of uses. They could also appeal the legislative action to our appeal authority. Now, I don't know what they would do when it got in front of the appeal authority for legislative action. That's not typically what they do. They usually hear appeals on an administrative action. So if someone appeals an administrative decision, like for example, let's say tonight you were to deny that applicant that preliminary plat because you came to the determination that, oh, there's too many homes there. And they disagreed with that. And it went to our appeal authority. He could look at the facts and look at our ordinance and make a decision. I don't know what he would do here, but the state says that's who has to hear it. It's not normally a legislative action can only be referred, not appealed. So there could be a referendum on it, but it's a little weird to me. But that's what they passed in state law.
So it says anything specifically listed as not permitted, you can't make a decision on. It's only if we haven't mentioned. Is that correct?
Sorry, what?
That's subsection 6C.
Yeah, I'll pull up the.
The way I read this is the city planner will make the interpretation if the business purpose is not listed in the code as permitted, conditional, or not permitted. So if we don't want strip clubs, we have to specifically say strip clubs are not permitted. If we didn't say that, then you could make, then they could fill it.
It's a 6.
So number 6 is the conditions of which, I guess you should read the first line of condition 6. For the city planner to make interpretations, it has to meet these things. And subsection C says if it lists specifically not permitted,
Yeah.
you're not required.
No, it's not allowed. Oh, wait, no, oh, you're saying that. So is it D? No use interpret shall allow use. No, sorry, which subsection are you referring to? Any use specifically listed as not permitted in the land use chart shall not be allowed in that zone. So it's not allowed. And that's currently how it is. That's not any change.
Yeah.
I would be forced to say, you know what, this isn't listed. It's not permitted. And so you have a choice. You can either appeal that or you can ask to add it to the chart.
Yeah. Our code. We have a pretty extensive list of conditional uses for commercial. But if it's not specifically listed in agriculture, for some reason, we say agriculture zone, we don't say that a liquor store is not permitted in agricultural zone. The way I'm reading this is, that means they can bill and say, because you didn't list it, now I can make the bill that I can.
They could, yeah, they can ask you, but the city council will determine whether it can or can't. We'll go through the process, it'll be considered. That's it. I can't say, oh yeah, it's not, what I do stays the same. So it's not permitted, I can't allow it, it's not listed, it's not permitted. But they can go, well, I want it to be permitted. I petition the city council to consider it. And then it goes to planning commission says yay or nay. I mean, it really is a very similar process to just a code amendment.
But what I'm sure this is, we're giving authority to the city planner. So our use authority, so the city planner is authorized to enter use classification provisions as title and any rule or regulation adopted pursuant thereto as provided in the section. And then the section goes on to say that if it's not listed, the city planner will make interpretation of the existing code and say it's permitted business or it's not.
No, that goes to the legislative. That goes to the next one. So C says any use specifically listed as not permitted for a particular zone shall not be allowed. So I'm just gonna say it's not allowed.
In there. That's.
Oh, I see. If it's unlisted. So not permitted.
This, I think.
Yeah. That's not the intent. If it's not listed, it's not allowed. And our code already says that. Does it conflict with that? I don't see where it conflicts with it.
The standards for use classification interpretation. The following standards shall apply to the use classification. The classification interpretation is defined that the city planner will make those decisions. Subject to section, subset A through. So the only way that you're not required or permitted to make classification interpretation is if we specifically call it code that it's non-permitted use. And then my concern is, and then this isn't a reflection of you, again, it's consequences. I'm not really willing to supersede authority for a city planner to interpret permitted uses of business. Because that will be interpreted to be too strict or too lenient if it's not a code. And so before I'm ready to agree to do this, I want to revisit all our conditional uses and see if the businesses that we have completed and businesses we want. Because someone can come in here and want to open a wedding facility and conflict of interest or dislike between the city staff, that will be interpreted as not allowed. So I'm not just saying this is going to be strip balls, but also might not allow legitimate businesses as well. But I want to revisit.
There's an appeal process. But there currently is no appeal process. This puts I don't. You can look into this closer, but I guess I'm not seeing eye to eye on this one because I don't see how it changes at all the way the process that's currently in place. If it's not listed, it's not allowed. Now what the city planner does determine is what the use classification is. What are you calling that business and is it in that chart? And is it substantially there's a provision in there where it needs to be substantially similar. So if a proposed use is most similar to, so E and F, no use interpretation shall allow use in a particular zone unless the use is substantially similar to a use allowed in the zone. If a proposed use is most similar to a conditional use authorized in the zone, which it is proposed to be located. Any interpretation allowing such use shall require that the use be approved only as a conditional use. So I don't see, I guess I'm not seeing anything in here that says if it's not listed, then the city planner can say, oh yeah, it's allowed, or no, it's not allowed. It's just not allowed until they go through that process with planning commission and city council of adding it to the chart or not.
So if it's omitted,
If it's omitted, it's just not allowed. And I mean, we can go through the chart again, but I don't think that this is necessarily a reason to do that. I mean, we went through, I think it was last year. Was it last year we went through a long, extensive process of going through all the uses. Maybe it was the year before. We can do that again. I don't know. I don't know if this is a reason to do that, just because it really doesn't change it all that much. It just formalizes it and provides a process. But if you want to review this more, if you think there's some unintended consequences here, by all means, do it. I'm just not seeing it.
was that our public hearing?
Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
Open the public
I
hearing.
probably went, yeah.
Any comments for the public hearing? We'll close the public hearing. I agree. Let's do that. Thanks, guys. Thank you for coming. Have a good evening. Discussion, further discussion. We need to reset. Okay. We'll go to the discussion on this. I guess if it's not omitted, it could be appealed to the city council.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? I understand what Tyler is trying to, what Tyler is saying. I'm not sure my position on it though.
This doesn't change the provision in code which states if it's not listed, it's not permitted. It's not that language is not in this ordinance, but it's in another part of our code. So it's already covered. So unless there's something here I'm not seeing that conflicts with that, I don't think it changes it. I really don't.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Approval of recommendation for ordinance 2524. Pending. We go 19/2010. Classification of new and listed uses. Setting for the process for classification of uses and legislative action for new or unlisted.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion by Troy for approval of this amending the code. The ordinances, excuse me. And a second by Rita. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 4-0, it passes. I got all public hearing.
Sorry.
Well,
You do great, Claire. That's why. A lot of faith in.
The 19.010 on flag lots, including allowing flag lots along the arterial roads. Levi, do you want to lead us in?
Yeah, so this was discussed, I believe, back in March, and it's been put on the back burner. Staff has done a little bit of research. There's some different things we could do with our flag lot ordinance, but at this point in time, staff is simply recommending to lift the requirement or the restriction on flag lots on arterial roads. Currently you have a flag lot if it's an arterial road, it's listed in the city's master plan. We discussed that previously. In general, I think the discussion was there's not necessarily opposition to having flag lots on arterial roads. I think there's some other things to consider there, additional accesses and things, but that is all that's being considered with this. We could open up the flag lot ordinance and get into it. The reality is they're going to work in very limited places, and I believe this ordinance at least opens the door for flag lots to go on lots where places like 3200 South, not just the city's lot. I mean, the city's lot is what brought this up. If you recall, we have this lot next door and the city's thinking about maybe selling it. Haven't made a final determination there, but this could provide more of an opportunity to sell, one of these long, deep lots on 3200 South, so they can build a house in the back, and have access to it. There's a lot of other details we can get into on flag lots, but that's all that's being proposed with this one.
We'll open the public hearing.
Yeah. Once we're done with the public hearing, if we can take a 5-second pause, the audio file is getting too big and I need to.
Okay. 40 seconds. Seeing there's no comment, we'll close the public hearing.
Still 9:47.
Okay, good. Okay. We'll open the discussion. This is our last items. For the recommendation ordinance 25/25 amending the NCC 19-010 flag lot restriction, reducing restriction on any discussions. Troy, you look eager right now.
No. I agree with you, I mean, like I've considered some of the other items, there's a lot of stuff we can probably dig deep into on everything other flag lots. But like I stated, it's pretty restrictive, so I don't think it's.
Any other comments or discussion? Karina?
No,
No.
I like it.
Tyler? My only concern is it's pretty deep on 3200 South. There's a lot of 1 acre lots going along there. So are we opening a can of worms?
Well, probably not, because most of those are too narrow for a flag lot. If they happen to be wide enough, or maybe they do a lot line adjustment so they get enough width with their neighbors or something. There'll be a few here and there. I think the city passed a wide-reaching ADU ordinance that could go on any lot.
That's true.
And this last year we got 2. I think we've had 10 since that was passed in 2020. 10 to 12 probably.
This would be a road that's subdivided and.
No, it's private. It's private lane for the access. Yeah, that's flag lots there. Yeah.
Does the zoning requirements, will it just comply with the current zoning overlay?
Yeah, I mean, zoning still applies.
Yeah, so.
Right. Yeah, it does. We could get into all of that of whether, but what's being proposed tonight is just this one thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Go. I'd like to make a recommendation to approve. Make a recommendation to amend flag lots and to allow it to be along arterial roadways.
Third second.
I'll say.
There's been a motion to approve the recommendation to include flag lots along interior roads, ways, and a second by Troy. Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's bring it to a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's 4-0, it passes. And so. One item left, staff report. Levi?
Just want to mention our general plans in full swing. Troy was at Heritage Days, helped me out there, just talk to people, and we also had a public open house that Troy and Nick were at last month, and we would have liked to have. It would have been nice to have all the people here come to that. I'll just say that it was a good discussion, and we had but we were hoping to get a few more people there. But it was great. The people that were there offered some great suggestions, and anyway, we're whittling that down. We're getting to a point, and just thinking out loud here that we probably ought to bring something to the planning commission of some kind of a update or something there of where we're at in the process. We have a steering committee that's been involved, Claire and Nick. But I think it'd probably be good to give some kind of an update there. So maybe I'll do that in the next meeting, just kind of off. The
team seems on top of this.
Yeah, the consultants, it's marching along, it's probably going to be a 9-month process, which could, a lot of cities go 18 months with these, and we're getting through it. We're getting it done. We got a lot of master plans to get through, so we're trying to just march forward with this one. And I'm positive, we don't know at this point where it's going to land. I'll just say that we've had a lot of public engagement, a lot of analysis. We don't quite know exactly where it is. That's kind of the next step in the process, is coming up with some drafts to actually react to. And that would be a good time to put them in front of you, kind of give you an idea of this is what we've heard. This is some initial drafts for you to react to there. So
Do we know like how many individual feedback we've gotten from our community with regards to the survey, Heritage?
Yeah, Heritage Days, I mean, I would say, we talked 30-40 people maybe there throughout the day. I think we've gotten about 200 responses on the survey. Not as high as part of the reason it's still open is it's not as high as I'd like. I'd like to make another push. I think I've realized that people don't get as excited about general plan as they do about recreation, open space, or a rec center. And we've surveyed a lot, but we've pushed it. We really have pushed this survey, and we've texted people. I don't know if you guys have gotten text about it or seen it in the newsletter. We're trying to get feedback. We really pushed that that open house. We didn't get the numbers that I thought we might get. I think we got 25, 30 maybe. I was hoping to get 100. People aren't excited about this stuff as you and I in general, but
You.
It was good. Yeah, we've had some good engagement. I don't mean to shed a negative light, because I think the engagement we've had, it's been good, and we've been hearing voices that I feel like are representative of the cross section of our community. New people, older people that have been in town, and our community has changed a lot since the last general plan, 2016. There's a lot of new residents, and we are hearing those voices. I'm just hoping we hear a few more before we kind of finalize that public engagement. I think that's all I got.
Yeah, the last couple of weeks, I've spent a lot of time reviewing development plans, including the fields that we just heard tonight.
Yeah.
several phases in Nibley Meadows. There's revisions to phase 4. They're moving forward with phase 5 and 7. We have Apple Creek, a small subdivision. It's a revision of a conservation law. They want to subdivide and work out a development agreement. That'll be coming to you soon.
Next agenda, yeah.
There's the LDS church site near 3400 South on 12th West. Going through, we did our first round of site plan review on that one. They really they're pushing to get started real quick, so I'd imagine that'll be on a really soon agenda item. There's a new subdivision that it's public record, but it's just west of Todd Stimpson's Johnson Meadows. There's about 14 lots right in there that they didn't.
On the other side of the canal?
Yeah, it's on the other side of the canal, on the other
South
side
of Apple
450
Creek.
West, south of Apple Creek. So there's about 14 lots. It was an incomplete submittal, but we're working through that to move forward with that. And then Ridgeline Park, they're working on their last plat to build that out, aside from the commercial site along the highway there. So it's just been really busy. It's spent a lot of time on that. I also have some construction projects underway. 1300 West Half Road, we should be wrapping that up with asphalt Friday. And then there's still some landscaping and some striping and stuff, but we're getting close on that one. And then 1200 West, the final phase of that, this one connects 2500 South to 2200 South. And there's a gap of about a half a block that's gonna be newly constructed. The rest will be reconstructed. They start that on July 28th, and that will extend through October, mid-October, before they finish that one up. The intermittent closures throughout that process, the whole project duration. We're also working on a new well. This well is planned to go at the Green Waste site. We just secured approval of not quite notice of award, but really close to a $3.8 million loan to help fund with that. That'll be repaid with water impact fees, future growth. That'll part of the funding also comes from 2 other grants that we secured a year or 2 ago. One is $760,000 from the Department or Division of Water Resources. And then there's another $400,000 that we're finalizing that grant for $400,000 from the Bureau of Reclamation. So combined with $1 million in impact fees, we have about $5 million to do this. Drill a well, equip it, and then connect it to our system. That'll be probably a year-long process. The initial drilling is really quick, but then we have to build the structure and things. So we're working through that. With that, there is a public hearing on the 31st of July at City Council if you have any concerns with the funding source, and it allows people to discuss or hear about this loan, provide public input, and then it's just part of the process to secure this loan and finalize the closing of it. Anyway, a little busy on my part, but I do have an intern now. He works once a week.
Once a week.
He's great. He's actually a dear friend of mine as well, but he used to work for Park City, he now works for the federal government, and he's looking to get back into the URS. He says, just let me shadow you for the day. I go, you're gonna learn everything I know in about 2 days, so yeah, go ahead. But he's a great resource for me. It's good to have his insight. So he's very experienced in road construction. He's a geotech engineer. But do you have any questions of what I'm doing, how I'm getting there? Okay.
Alrighty, I'll be brief with my last portion so we can all head home. Just furthering on what Tom said about that water improvement bond. On our city website, provided with information from Tom and Justin, I created a question and answers page, so please publicly share that. It goes over some common questions, or also talks about breakdown of funding, also addresses our water base increase and the tiers that were adjusted back in April. And then it has links to those meetings, so just use it as much as you can and share that. Another thing, our next meeting is August 7th. For that meeting, we've already sent out, as Levi addressed earlier, we follow state code straight as an arrow, and so we've already sent out the letters to everyone within 300 feet of the
a proposed amendment for the Apple Creek Phase One First Amendment. We've sent those out yesterday, got everything out, so hopefully we can make sure that the public knows about it. And it should be, I should mention well. And then the last thing, the mayor for specifically Commissioners Brown and Obrey, the mayor did ask staff to make polo shirts and dress shirts, and so hopefully you got those today. If you have any issues, just reach out.
One more thing to add, it sounds like you guys are having trouble getting into teams. So, at least this last meeting or two, there's been some issues there. Our IT guy suggested that we go toward giving you guys a city email address. The reason why that there's just a lot of online security with exterior emails. And so probably expect that in the coming weeks. We got to make sure we've got it in the budget and everything. There's a little bit of a cost there, but we get a city email address and yeah, be official that way.
Hey, meeting's adjourned.